with more than 56% of the vote. Official results released by the Electoral Commission earlier this week showed Mutharika had built a commanding lead over incumbent Lazarus Chakwera. A candidate needs to secure more than 50% of valid votes for an outright win. Meanwhile, former Malawian President Bakili Muluzi says he has had a phone conversation with President Lazarus Chakwera in which he asked the sitting president to concede defeat and congratulate Peter Mutharika for winning the September 16 elections. Muluzi says he told Chakwera that doing so would ensure there is peace and stability in the country. He called on Malawians to remain calm and avoid violence when the result is made public, possibly today. South Africa's National Police Commissioner Fanny Masemola says the motive to disband the KwaZulu-Natal Political Killings Task Team PKTT became clear when murder-accused Vusumuzi Ket Matlala was arrested. Matlala has been linked to Deputy National Commissioner for Crime Detection, General Shadrack Sibiya. He is one of the alleged criminal figures who are believed to have infiltrated law enforcement agencies. Masemola says although there was an attempt to disband the PKTT, it continues to operate, with police in a process of establishing another unit in Gauteng. Masemola has been testifying at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry in Pretoria.
After the arrest of Matlala on the 14th of May 2025, it became clear as to what was the objective for the disbandment. But the team was never, it is still working, and in any way currently we are going to beef it up, and Gauteng also we are in the process of establishing a PKTT for the province.
The Gauteng Department of Health in South Africa has met with the National Health Laboratory Service leadership to look into pathology services at their laboratory located at Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital in Johannesburg. This follows the Democratic Alliance Party's visit at the laboratory yesterday, where they revealed a backlog of over 14,000 biopsy reports. Member of the Executive Council MEC of Health in Gauteng Province of the country, Nomantu Nkomo Ralihoku, addressed this issue.
During this meeting, we recognized the need for a dedicated multidisciplinary task team composed of specialists from both our department and NHLS. This team will work in collaboration to devise a comprehensive plan to prioritize delays in pathology results. The task team was also tasked with exploring the inclusion of private pathologists to help alleviate the delays. As the department, then, we are also actively looking into the possibility of establishing our own laboratory to fast-track the processing of pathology specimens. This initiative aims to enhance our internal capacity, reduce dependency on NHLS, and ensure that our patients receive timely and efficient care.
11 West Africans transferred from the United States to Ghana as part of an agreement with the Trump administration have been deported a second time. Their lawyer, Oliver Barker Vomawor, says this happened despite fears some of them may face possible torture and persecution. At least 6 of the deportees are now in neighboring Togo, while the whereabouts of other 5 are known. A Ghana government spokesperson did not respond to Reuters news agency's request for comment. The group includes 4 Nigerians, 3 Togolese, 2 Malians, 1 Liberian, and 1 Gambian. Ghana's President John Dramani Mahama told reporters this month his government had agreed to take in nationals from other West African countries who were being deported from the U.S. under President Donald Trump's immigration crackdown. That is all for now. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Business News, I am Chanduko Ligege.
The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Kylian Mbappe scores twice as the side Real Madrid continues with their winning run in the La Liga last night. And Orlando Pirates back to winning ways against Sekhukhune United last night in the Betway Premiership. I have details of these and other stories at the bottom of the hour.
Africa. conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é um amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel África. Adivinha só, a Channel África quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel África está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Ukatili wa kijinsia unaharibu maisha na kutenga jamii. Hutokea nyumbani, shuleni, kazini na mara nyingi kwa ukimya. Lakini hauwezi kuendelea. Ukiona, ongea. Ikiwa unaumia, funguka, kwa sababu kutofanya lolote sio chaguo. Sikiliza vituo vyote 19 vya redio kuanzia Jumatano ya tarehe 23 Julai kwenye mijadala, ushauri, tamthilia, maonyesho ya elimu na mahojiano na wataalamu, manusura, watunga sheria na nchi nzima iliyoathirika na ukatili wa kijinsia kwenye vituo vyako pendwa vya redio. Piga simu 0800-428-428 ili kuripoti unyanyasaji au kupata msaada. GBV ikomeshwe na wewe. Ujumbe huu umeletwa kwenu na shirika la SABC.
Okay, it's 9 minutes past 6 Central African time, and every day after the 6 o'clock news, we try to start your news day with a catch-up of the top stories that have played out in the last 24 hours, and we present them to you in a concise format so that you can be informed and start your news day right on top of all the stories that have been playing out, as I said. And we begin what we call the Africa Roundup with this story from South Africa's flagship science project, the Square Kilometre Array, which will provide the backdrop as more than 400 leading scientists and policymakers gather for the G20 Science Ministerial at the SKA site in Carnarvon, and that's in the Northern Cape province. The SKA, now under construction, will form part of the global SKA project shared between South Africa and Australia. And once completed, the multi-billion rand initiative will become the world's largest and most sensitive radio telescope. SKA Mid-Telescope Director is Dr. Lindsay Magnus. All right, we'll come to that one in a short while because first of all, let's take a look at this story from Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, who on Tuesday hosted Rwandan President Paul Kagame in fact, let's start in South Africa. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa addressed the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly on Tuesday, using the global stage to highlight pressing issues facing Africa and the wider world.
We must act decisively to silence all the guns everywhere to realize the goal of sustainable development and global peace. And I do believe that this is an objective that is possible to reach. As we commemorate the 80th anniversary of the UN, the relevance of this institution and various multilateral processes for the maintenance of international peace and security is being willfully undermined. There is an increasing reliance on unilateral military action in contravention of international law. The United Nations Security Council has proven to be ineffective in its current form and composition in carrying out its charter mandate to maintain international peace and security.
Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi on Tuesday hosted Rwandan President Paul Kagame in Cairo for a state visit focused on strengthening and rapidly growing partnership between the two nations. The trip forms a part of ongoing efforts to deepen bilateral ties and broaden cooperation across various sectors. Here's President Kagame in Cairo.
Rwanda regards Egypt as a strong partner, and our cooperation is tangible and steadily growing. The agreements signed today build on the strong foundation we have already established. Together, we are building a modern heart care center in Kigali, a landmark facility that will significantly enhance specialized cardiac treatment in Rwanda and beyond. This collaboration is reinforced by education and workforce development. Egypt continues to provide advanced training for Rwandan medical professionals.
Let's go back now to an earlier story. South Africa's flagship science project, the Square Kilometre Array, will provide the backdrop as more than 400 leading scientists and policymakers gather for the G20 Science Ministerial at the SK site in Carnarvon in South Africa's Northern Cape province. Now, the SKA Mid, now under construction, will form part of the global SKA project shared between South Africa and Australia. And once completed, the multi-billion rand initiative will become the world's largest and most sensitive radio telescope. SKA Mid Telescope Director is Dr. Lindsay Magnus.
So we're about 4 years in the total 10-year construction cycle. So a couple of the early years we're procuring contracts and so on. Right now we've got 7 of these new big dishes physically under construction on site. 4 of them have completed their big lift, so the big dish being lifted up onto the pedestal. And then of course we've got the remaining dishes either being fabricated in the factories in China or already on the sea on their way here. So currently there are 13 full members of the Square Kilometre Array Observatory. We're always looking for new members. The nature of this kind of instrument is that it brings astronomers together. So we're in early conversations with countries in Europe, with countries in Asia, to get them involved in the project.
Multi-choice viewers, that's the paid television service in across the continent, but based in South Africa. Well, they can rest assured that their favorite shows will continue following the company's takeover by French media giant Canal+. Now, the announcement came as Canal+ confirmed its mandatory takeover offer for multi-choice shares, cementing its effective control of the South African entertainment leader. CEO Maxime Sada says that the integration process will now begin.
There will not be any duplication because what's beautiful in this combination is that there is no territorial overlap. This Canal+ has been operating in close to 50 countries, 25 of them in Africa. MultiChoice has been operating in 16 African countries without any overlap.
I must say, never, as Maxime mentioned, I've always been struck by the level, of competencies and vision for Africa that, all the executives along the decades of MultiChoice have proven. And so, we are intending to follow that track.
And that's how we come to the end of today's edition of the Africa Roundup. We'll have more for you tomorrow after the 6 o'clock news. And just a reminder, today is Heritage Day in South Africa, a very important day where we mark and recognize the culture that South Africa possesses. And I think something that we celebrate even as a continent is that which makes us African. All right, more still to come right here on Channel Africa.
Are you fluent in French, Chinyanja, Portuguese, and Kiswahili? Are you passionate about radio? And are you looking to work in South Africa? Do you have papers that qualify you to work in South Africa? In that case, we might have an opportunity for you to work for Channel Africa. Send us your CV and demo at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Remember, if you don't hear from us within 14 days, it means you have not made it or you have not been selected. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Peta are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
Ukraine's High Commissioner to South Africa, Lyubov Abritova, has wrapped up her term in office with a farewell event in the city of Johannesburg on Monday. Speaking to the media during the farewell, she called on the United Nations to prove itself as a platform for peace, saying that the war in Ukraine shows something is not working. Abritova described the Ukraine's growing ties with sub-Saharan Africa as a renaissance, highlighting new embassies and stronger bilateral links. Channel Africa reporter Michael Mbewe has the story for us.
The event brought together members from different diplomatic corps, business and friends to bid farewell to the outgoing Ukrainian ambassador to South Africa, Lyubov Abritova. Speaking to the media, Abritova delivered a message of both gratitude and urgency. As the United Nations General Assembly convenes, Abritova said while the UN has provided a platform to raise Ukraine's concerns, the 2022 full-scale invasion by Russia exposed what she called a failure in the system.
This is the week of diplomacy, but also this is a big challenge for the United Nations itself to prove again its existence and to prove that it can be the mechanism that all the countries will be following and that will be using to make the peace, to preserve peace, to maintain it. In our circumstances, we have seen that for more than 10 years of war, this was the platform, the important platform to speak about Russian aggression of Ukraine, but we witnessed already in 2022 the full-scale invasion, which speaks about failure, that something is not working there.
However, she is optimistic that the engagements will bring forth favorable outcomes for Ukraine following the war with Russia.
So this is yet another opportunity for us to make it work. I hope that all the engagements that our leaders are going to have, that they will be fruitful and that Ukrainian people will finally receive the peace that they so much deserve.
Abritova described Ukraine's growing relations with sub-Saharan Africa as a renaissance, pointing to new embassies and deeper partnerships.
First of all, of course, this is the time of Ukraine's renaissance in sub-Saharan Africa. The number of embassies that we open is just the consequence of that dialogue that both Ukraine, but also African countries realizing it's so crucial and important for us to move forward. Now when most of us are looking at the diversification of bilateral engagements, we see a very important role in building the win-win collaboration between the countries.
After serving for almost 4 years in South Africa, she thanked South Africans for extending an olive branch in diplomacy and appealed for South Africa to continue supporting efforts to bring home Ukrainian prisoners of war held in Russian captivity.
But also I want to say, using this opportunity, that I really appreciate the people of South Africa that embraced Ukrainians, embraced us in such a difficult time in our history. We always will remember the solidarity that people of South Africa expressed, but also I hope that South Africa will continue to play the role in bringing the children of Ukraine back from Russian captivity, the role to bring prisoners of war back to Ukraine, and of course to establish the relations in trade and economic sectors where we finally can benefit from what all of us were trying to do for all last years.
South African diplomat and former permanent representative to the United Nations, Jerry Machila, gave a moving tribute to Abreva.
Well, first, I think she did a good job. It's a very difficult situation. And you come to a country that is so much focused on non-alignment, very active non-alignment, and also it has its foreign policy of making peace, resolving conflict through negotiations, through dialogue. So we find her approach very interesting because she was saying to us in government, in the ANC, please help us to resolve this issue with less bloodshed, less destruction.
Machila articulated on how South Africa navigated through the difficult terrain of finding a diplomatic balance between its BRICS ally Russia and Ukraine in the peace process. He praised Abreva for her due diligence.
And I think it was on that basis that we started to people thinking about the 10-point plan for the president peace process and initiative in Ukraine. Because we thought, okay, we know the Russians. We know Ukraine, some of us from the past, pre-94. We know it very, very well. And we know the role they played in the anti-apartheid struggle. So we're duty-bound to find a very delicate balance between one BRIC country and Ukraine, which we know. And we're saying to ourselves, maybe our role is bridge building. Maybe our role is to say, please give dialogue a chance. Please let's have ceasefire. Please lay down the arms. Let's go to the table and find a solution. And I think she persevered in this role. She didn't make enemies. She made friends. She made British. I think she persuaded a lot of people that peace needs to be given chance. And for this, I really applaud her for the work she has done.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
New day, new stories. Start your morning right with Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Now, South Africa's Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training, Dr. Nomusa Dube-Ncube, says that there's a need to ensure that older women have conversations with young girls about their career paths from an early age. She was delivering the keynote address at the last day of the Top Women Conference, TOPCO. This year's conference explored advancing gender empowerment in South Africa and beyond. Tudongobeni compiled this report.
The 2025 Top Women Conference, TOPCO, that took place at the Sandton Convention Centre north of Johannesburg in South Africa's Gauteng province, attracted thousands of women both physically and online. The two-day event closed on Tuesday after a jam-packed program of panel discussions with women leaders, networking sessions and keynote addresses by government ministers. South Africa's Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training, Dr. Nomusa Dube-Ncube, delivered the keynote address on the last day of the event. Dube-Ncube spoke under the theme on empowerment through education, unlocking South Africa's next generation. She says there's a need to ensure that older women have conversations with young girls.
Particularly within the that as we see such a broad variety of women in this room, it's something that we need to begin to put on our agenda. How do we begin to dialogue with our young people, to dialogue with our young girls, acknowledging that our differences should not be a deterrent, but they should be considered as a gateway into understanding each other, and the youth with its innovation, the worldviews of the elders and their wisdom, many of us can find a ground to ensuring that we bridge that gap.
Dube-Ncube explored how higher learning institutions and vocational training can drive gender equity, youth inclusion, and sustainable development by aligning education with industry needs, fostering innovation, and dismantling systematic barriers. South Africa can build a more resilient, future-ready workforce. Dube-Ncube emphasized the role that collaboration can play in driving young people's empowerment with relevant skills.
So distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, unlocking the potential of our young people requires collaboration. Government cannot do it alone. We need strong partnerships between Department of Higher Education and Training, sector education training, what we call SETAs, the private sector. Our SETAs remain critical as a vehicle for skills development in our country, bringing the gap between the learning institutions as well as the workplaces. Through the learnerships and internships, bursaries within our SETA education and training, we bridge the theoretical gap that our children get from school. That is why I always say we should not be, at this day and age, having what we call unemployed graduates.
Meanwhile, Janine Zeika, Head Value Propositions and Client Experience at Standard Bank Business and Commercial Bank South Africa, says the event is designed for all kinds of women with the hope that they succeed through the networking sessions.
Yes, there's women leaders that are part of the conference that this appeals to, but there's also the women-led businesses, and we struggle with many of the same things. We're juggling many balls in the air. We're trying to find balance in life. We're trying to be mothers, wives, daughters, sisters, cousins, everything in one go, including being leaders or entrepreneurs. And what we find is that synergy in bringing the women together not only opens up doors, because now you can connect with entrepreneurs and women leaders who have access to supply chains and many other in a network, but you're also sharing in a common mindset that we're all human and how we interact with that.
For Channel Africa News, I am Tutongobeni in Johannesburg.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
It's 28 minutes past 6 Central African Time, and one of the things I like to do on the program is to go back in time to look at some of the key moments that happened in history on this day. And Guinea-Bissau today is celebrating its independence from Portugal, and it became the first country to formally gain independence from the European nation. I think there are about 5 countries across the continent that have Portuguese colonial past, including, of course, in southern Africa you'll find Angola and as well as Mozambique. But not to forget Cape Verde, Sao Tome and Principe, and Guinea-Bissau. So Guinea-Bissau declared its independence from Portugal on this day, September the 24th, in 1973. If I remember correctly, it was 2 years later that Mozambique got its independence from Portugal. All right, we'll catch you up with more today's in history during the course of the day, the morning rather. It's at 6:30, which means it's time to catch you up with your news headlines. And here's... Oh, Chanduko Ligege is doing the news for us this morning. Chanduko, good morning.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The Malawi Electoral Commission is expected to announce the election results today. Malawi's President Peter Mutharika is projected to have won last week's presidential election with more than 56% of the vote. The President of South Africa, Cyril Ramaphosa, has expressed concern on the security and humanitarian situations in the DRC, Sudan, Gaza, and other parts of the world. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he believes that U.S. President Donald Trump could help change Chinese President Xi Jinping's stance on Russia's war in Ukraine. More news at 7 a.m. Central African Time.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Time now for some sport as we say good morning to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning from the sports desk. So Kylian Mbappe scored twice as La Liga leaders Real Madrid continued their impressive start to the season with a comfortable victory at Levante. So with his side 2-1 ahead, the Frenchman double in a space of 2 minutes sealed a 6th win from their opening 6 games and moved 5 points clear of rival Barcelona. Mbappe got his first from a penalty spot in the 64th minute, chipping a Panaka over Levante goalkeeper Matthew Ryan. He then took his tally to about 7 goals so far this season, with a deft finish after being slipped in by Arde Gulam. Earlier, Vinicius Jr. had put Real in front with a superb strike, bending the ball into the corner of the net with the outside of his boot from a tight angle. Meanwhile, Barcelona can still reduce Real Madrid's lead at the top of the table when they visit Oviedo on Thursday in the La Liga, in La Liga rather. Now, back home now, onto some football news. So one of Amajita's players to watch for at the World Cup is 18-year-old Fletcher Smythe-Lowe. So Lowe, who plays in Portugal, is one of the 3 overseas players that are part and parcel of the Amajita squad that is heading to the World Cup later on today. He was also one of the standout performers at this year's Africa Men's Cup of Nations tournament at the under-20 level, where he was named the player of the season, or rather the tournament. Meanwhile, Jordan, who is the president of the South African Football Association, Denny Jordan, having this to say about the team as they depart later on today for Chile for the under-20 FIFA Men's World Cup.
It is the first time that we have an under-20 team going to the FIFA World Cup as the champions of Africa, and therefore the best football team in Africa. You're going there, having beaten Nigeria and having beaten Morocco in your march to be crowned African champions.
So one of those players is the goalkeeper, Fletcher Smythe-Lowe, having this to say as the team departs for the World Cup.
For me, the number one thing that we have to do is we have to go to the World Cup, and we have to play as well as we can, with as much spirit as we can, and with the best attitude that we can to make the country proud. And then obviously the fruits that will result from this, no one knows, but we think we have the capacity to win.
On to athletics news now. Junior World 400-meter champion Odeme Ogon described competing in the 4x400-meter relay final at the World Senior Athletics Championships in Tokyo, where South Africa ended an 8-year medal drought, as the best feeling of his young career. The 20-year-old was the youngest athlete in the final, running alongside Wade Fanigag, Zagi Tenene, as well as Lyth Pillay. Ogon, who's coached by La Wanzel, told SABC Sport that winning a bronze medal at the senior level ranks among his biggest achievements, admitting he never expected to return home with a medal hanging around his neck. Team South Africa, that sent athletes of 48, a team of 48 athletes to Tokyo, returned with just 1 medal on Tuesday morning, proudly carried by Ocon.
It was a good feeling, running against guys that I look up to as well. It was just a thing of me going out there and keeping my head straight. Obviously, I couldn't see anything, but I could obviously still continue running. I didn't care what that didn't stop me, so I just went out there and do what I enjoy.
And finally, in cricket news, Pakistan boosted their hopes of reaching the Asia Cup final by edging to a 5-wicket victory against Sri Lanka in Abu Dhabi yesterday. So after their disappointing as well as controversial defeats by rivals India, Pakistan slipped to 80 for 5 in pursuit of 134 before a partnership of 58 between Hussein Talat as well as Mohammad Nawaz rescued the team. Now needing 46 from about 40 balls, Nawaz hit Wanidu Harasanga, who had 2 for 5 after his first 2 overs for back-to-back boundaries. And when the leg spinner returned to bowl, the 17th over, Talit struck another 2 fours. That swung the equation from 26 runs needed from 24 balls to 14 now needed from 18 balls. And Nevhanda Nawaz added 3 more sixes to seal the victory with over 2 overs to spare. Nawaz finished 38 not out, with Talat unbeaten on 32. So while Pakistan would not have been eliminated from this defeat, they would have needed a series of other results to go their way. The situation now facing Sri Lanka. India as well as Bangladesh, who both won their opening Super 4 games, will meet in Dubai later on today. Meanwhile, the top 2 teams in the Super 4 stages will contest Sunday's final. Well, that's a wrap from the sports desk at the Sawa. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Alternatively, give us a call. The newsroom line is +27 11714 4459. I'm back with more sports news in the second hour of Africa Rise and Shine. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Right, let's catch you up with some business news now. A first look at what's been happening in the world of economics, commerce. And on the business desk this morning, we say good morning to Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning. And our top story this morning: African countries have been urged to collaborate and trade as one with other major economies around the world. This came out of the South Africa-China Trade and Investment Promotion Conference in Johannesburg. More than 400 leading Chinese enterprises from 44 cities across 13 provinces were present, covering textiles, appliances, electronics, building materials, furniture, and other areas. President of the Black Business Council, Elias Monache, says the G20 presidency also plays a key role in this matter.
There are 54 countries. On what basis then do we trade with Russia on equal footing as a continent, as opposed to individual countries dealing with China on bilateral or multilateral basis? We need them to look at this thing holistically as a continent.
An economic expert for the South African local airline Airlink has explained a key part of how competition is assessed. Anthony Fellet testified for a second day yesterday in the Competition Tribunal hearing taking place in Pretoria. The almost week-long sitting is considering evidence over allegations of excessive and predatory pricing by Airlink. Fellet, testifying in the airline's defense, told the panel that their approach focuses on what it would actually cost a new airline to enter the market, rather than just looking at the incumbent's airline expenses.
And that's essentially what I've sought to do, my capital cost calculations, where I seek rather to take the historical cost of each of the fixed assets. I'd rather start with the current value of those assets, but not new for old. I don't assume new for old, but rather the condition as purchased. And that's, I think, an important distinction.
Gas analyst Collins Megwe says while oil is a major commodity that supports many sectors of the economy in Nigeria, investors are gradually showing interest in the country's lucrative market. This comes after Nigeria's massive Dangote refinery exported its first shipment of gasoline to the United States. The export was handled by commodities giant Vitol and U.S. distributor Sanoco and delivered 320,000 barrels of gasoline. Megwe says Dangote's move is an extremely strategic one.
The Dangote refinery's first U.S.-bound gasoline shipment, I would say that it is more than symbolic. It is actually extremely strategic.
A study in Ghana has found that a boom in artisanal gold mining has driven mercury contamination to dangerous levels in host communities, with soil readings in some areas reaching 134 times the amount deemed to be safe. The report by the New York-based environmental group Pure Earth and Ghana's Environmental Protection Authority is based on a year of samples taken from soil, water, crops and fish in 6 of Ghana's 13 mining regions. Despite Ghana's efforts to separate fully regulated mining from illegal activity, gold flows often overlap, blurring the lines and complicating enforcement. The CEO of South Korean lithium battery manufacturer Arisal has been sentenced to 15 years in prison over a fire that killed 23 employees last year. Park Soon-kwan was charged under South Korea's industrial safety law. The BBC's Jay Kwan has the details.
Most of those killed were Chinese workers who weren't given safety training. Industrial accidents have become a hot-button issue in South Korea after a series of high-profile deaths in recent years.
And our time for our first look at the indicators this morning. 1 US dollar in Nigeria is trading at 1,488 naira. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 15. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 55. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 63. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 31. Russia, 83 rubles 59. In India, it's 88 rupees 67. China, 7 yuan 11, and South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 28 cents this morning. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 85 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,764 per ounce this morning. It's edged up from yesterday's close, and platinum at $1,494 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is also higher at $67.79 a barrel. And those are your business news at this hour. I'll be back with another update in the next hour. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Hedbush.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa.
And today's G20 fact of the day. Did you know that the King Protea, which is South Africa's national flower, is the centerpiece of the G20 South Africa presidency's logo? Now, the flower symbolizes resilience, cultural pride, and natural beauty. It represents the nation's spirit. It has a distinctive crown-like appearance and can regenerate after fires, mirroring the country's ability to overcome adversity. The flower is culturally significant, appearing on official documents like passports, and is associated with hope and new beginnings. That's our G20 fact for this morning.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Wake up to the essence of the continent. Rise and shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa and China are taking another step towards strengthening their economic cooperation. This week, the Chinese Embassy, together with the Department of Trade, Industry and Competition, are hosting the South Africa-China Trade and Investment Promotion Conference, and the official opening of the 9th China-South Africa Trade Fair at Johannesburg's Gallagher Convention Center. Channel Africa's economics reporter Innocent Someso was there.
The event has drawn senior government leaders and over 400 Chinese enterprises from 13 provinces, showcasing opportunities across sectors ranging from textiles, electronics to building materials and furniture. Zuko Godlimpi is South Africa's Deputy Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition.
So obviously facing as we do the headwinds in the global trade environment, strengthening our trade is absolutely critical. In particular, as we've said, being able to diversify what we send to the Chinese market compared to what has been the case until now.
With the African Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, set to expire, the Deputy Minister shared his views on what this could mean for South Africa's trade future.
Well, from what we know, which was announced by the President of the United States, imposing a minimum of 10 to 15%, but in the case of Africa, 15% tariffs on pretty much all countries on the continent, it does mean that the tariff-free access to the U.S. market is all but gone. So I think the expiry next week is a formality. We would, of course, have preferred a situation where AGOA continues because AGOA has greater benefits for the South African economy.
For South African businesses, the fair presents a chance to tap into one of the world's largest markets and attract potential partners for local industries. Hanki Matabane, CEO of Black Business Council South Africa, says South African businesses should position themselves to take full advantage of these opportunities.
It is an opportune time because as you know, there are other complications with America, for example. So it's important that South African businesses should look at other options and look at other markets like China. And then China is big, as you know. But I fully agree with what you are saying. It's important that the Chinese should also come and establish companies here. For example, we've got a lot of vehicles in South Africa that are from China. We can't only just be exporters or importers of China's products. They must come and establish factories here so that we can create jobs in South Africa.
On the Chinese side, interest goes beyond simple trade in goods. Chinese enterprises are increasingly looking at South Africa as a hub for investment in value-added industries, areas that not only expand trade but also create local jobs. But the question remains, what new areas of investment are Chinese companies exploring in South Africa? I had a chat with Vice President of Sani Group, Roger Gu.
Yeah, I think it's very important between China and South Africa. Also, we have the confidence about the partnership between the two countries. Also, following the friendship between China and South Africa, Sani heavy industry company and Sani Group, we also have the renewable energy area products. We come here just we want to bring not only the products of equipment, but also we want to bring the green energy to South Africa.
As the conference and trade fair unfold, all eyes will be on how these discussions translate into concrete deals and whether they mark a new chapter in South Africa-China economic relations. For Channel Africa News, I'm Innocent Samos in Johannesburg.
Mornings made better with Peter and Asanda on Rise and Shine, weekdays 6 till 9 Central African Time on Channel Africa.
Now, across Africa, millions are facing the threat of preventable blindness, with cataracts still the leading cause. Rising cases of type 2 diabetes in countries such as South Africa, Kenya, Ghana and Burkina Faso are worsening the problem, especially among people in their middle years. Now, as part of Eye Care Awareness Month, the Right to Sight Trust is carrying out hundreds of free cataract surgeries to restore vision and dignity. Well, to unpack the impact on patients, families and communities, we're now joined by Dr. Jenny Laithwaite from the Ophthalmologic Society of South Africa, and also with the Trust. Let's say good morning to you, Dr. Laithwaite. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. The Right to Sight Trust, that's what I was looking for. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Peter, and good morning and happy Heritage Day in South Africa.
Yes, indeed. So, cataracts, I mean, I think everybody's even heard of the name because it's so common. Why are cataracts still such a major challenge in 2025 across the continent and not just South Africa?
So cataracts, as most people will know, is that all of us, if we live long enough, are going to develop cataracts. So as we have more aging populations, as we have people developing illnesses like diabetes more commonly, so specifically with changes in diet and changes in lifestyle, there definitely is an increase in cataracts developing earlier amongst populations. Cataract surgery is a comparatively simple operation, but it does require a certain degree of infrastructure, funding, professional ability, and also some consumable products in order to be able to conduct it well and to be able to provide vision back to patients who've lost it from cataracts.
So what is a cataract? Maybe I should have started there.
So inside your eye, you have a lens, which is like a transparent piece of glass that focuses the light as it enters your eye and falls on the retina at the back of your eye. And as we age, that lens changes and starts to become more misty, so that a patient with a cataract would describe that they see as if they're looking through a dirty window. They might keep on cleaning their glasses if they wear glasses, thinking that that's the problem. And later on, you might see those elderly people who've got that kind of whitish grey spot in the middle of their pupil, which is an advanced cataract. So cataract can cause blindness, but it causes a lot of visual impairment before then.
So to fix it, what do you do? Do you just cut away the stuff on the top of the lens, or what happens?
Yes, so it's a very delicate procedure. The patient's under anesthetic, usually just a local anesthetic, not a general anesthetic. And we clean out, we open the front membrane of the lens and we wash out that misty, cloudy cataract material. And then we implant a new artificial lens inside the patient's eye that is usually measured to be the right size for the patient's eye to give them excellent vision. And that should restore the clarity that they had before, and it should last for their whole life. One doesn't need to replace that lens again.
They say that prevention is better than cure. Are there things that we can do perhaps to reduce the risk or delay the process?
So cataracts are part of the natural aging process, which has got to do with oxidation in our bodies. So in theory, improving our diets, eating lots of fresh fruit and vegetables and much less processed goods is helpful. Protecting our eyes from sun exposure could reduce the risk and the earliness with which we develop cataracts. But most of us at this stage are most likely to develop them. If I develop a way of preventing them, my colleagues will be very jealous of me, but so far we don't have one.
So why is there an association with type 2 diabetes? What happens?
So diabetes is associated with oxidative damage in the body, and it causes damage to many different structures in the body, including the eye. And that damage affects the lens of the eye as well. Part of it is glucose levels that rise and fall and cause the lens to swell and shrink. And so gradually over time, it becomes more opaque. But also it's really accelerating those natural processes in the eye. And that's why we do see more patients developing cataracts at an earlier age.
Earlier, I think you spoke about resources, and I guess this is one of the biggest challenges that we have across the continent, South Africa included, particularly when you start to go to remote areas, rural areas. And I suppose this is where trusts like the Right to Sight Trust come into being, offering free surgeries and trying to reach as many people as you can.
Yes, it affects people in such severe ways and really takes away so much quality of life for the individual if they lose their vision, and also for the family. And in South Africa, we do have government projects that try to address cataracts, but the backlogs are still huge. And so, as ophthalmologists who are members of the Ophthalmological Society, many of us participate in the Right to Sight project, which enables us to help some of the patients who don't have access to medical aid or haven't yet reached the top of the waiting list in the government hospitals to have their cataract surgery done earlier.
So we've been talking mostly about cataracts, given the prominence of the issue, but there are other eye care issues that are of concern and that we should be talking about. What else do you see regularly in your practice?
Well, we have many diverse problems affecting patients. I'm in Johannesburg in South Africa. Certainly, there are things that affect children that are really important to address, and having children's vision screened early is really important. Picking up issues like squints early in life and having the child assessed is really important. And increasingly, we're finding that treating things like short-sightedness in children, it's really important to address those issues early, especially with children spending much more time doing close-up work or working on screens. We know that there's a higher prevalence of short-sightedness or myopia developing amongst those children.
I have to confess, I'm short-sighted, and I remember growing up in England, there was a program where every child got tested at school, and then they found out that I needed glasses. I was shocked that I could suddenly see. Kids don't know how much they should be seeing if you don't know, right?
Exactly, and that's the thing, and it is a wonderful thing, you know, especially for a short-sighted child. You don't usually need to fight with them to get them to wear their glasses. It's such an amazing experience when they suddenly see the whole world around them.
We talked about the diet for cataracts. Is there something we can do for eye health generally?
I think for children and for all of us who do a lot of work at our desks and looking at computers, one of the most useful things to follow is what we call the 20-20-20 rule. Focusing up close puts quite a strain on our eyes. And if you follow a system where you set a timer for every 20 minutes while you are working close up or while you're sitting reading for long hours, every 20 minutes, you look up for 20 seconds and you look 20 feet in the distance, which means you're allowed to daydream out of the window or look far to the other side of the room. It gives your eyes a break from focusing up close. It reduces a lot of eye strain. It's probably good for your mental health too. So the 20-20-20 rule is a rule that we should all try to follow.
Are there any indicators apart from not seeing or blurred vision and things like that that could also say there might be an issue with your eyes? I mean, things like persistent headaches, runny eyes. What else should we be looking out for that we should go and get checked out?
So there are a lot of things that make the eyes uncomfortable, affecting the surface of the eye. Often that's the kind of redness, itchiness, tearing and irritation, and those things are important and can be treated by an ophthalmologist or even by an optometrist often. The things that affect the inside of the eye are much more to do with vision, and as you say, sometimes things like headaches can be caused by the eyes. Gradual loss of vision or sudden loss of vision is probably even more concerning, and we would always want to assess a patient like that. Sometimes patients experience peculiar symptoms, things like little things floating across the vision, sometimes things that they think out of the corner of their eye, they're seeing a mosquito or a spider web, those floaters. Or if they see little flashing lights, flashes of lightning when there's no storm outside, those can be symptoms of eye problems as well. And they should definitely be addressed, and the eyes should be thoroughly examined if patients have those symptoms.
Dr. Laithwaite, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much indeed. A very important conversation and information that you shared. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
That's Dr. Laithwaite with the Ophthalmologic Society of South Africa as talking to us about the importance of eye care at this time. It's 7 o'clock, which means it's time for your news, and we've got quite a lot that's coming up this hour. But we begin with the news, and it's Chanduko Ligege at the desk.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. The Malawi Electoral Commission is expected to announce the election's results today. Malawi's former president, Peter Mutharika, is projected to have won last week's presidential election with more than 50% of the vote. Official results released by the Electoral Commission earlier this week showed Mutharika had built a commanding lead over incumbent Lazarus Chakwera. A candidate needs to secure more than 50% of valid votes for an outright win. Meanwhile, former Malawian President Bakili Muluzi says he has had a phone conversation with President Lazarus Chakwera in which he asked the sitting president to concede defeat and congratulate Peter Mutharika for winning the September 16 elections. Muluzi says he told Chakwera that doing so would ensure there is peace and stability in the country. He called on Malawians to remain calm and avoid violence when the result is made public, possibly today. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed concern on the security and humanitarian situations in the DRC, Sudan, Gaza, and other parts of the world. He says there are other countries that continue to violate international law and defy UN resolutions and rulings from bodies like the International Court of Justice. President Ramaphosa added that the establishment of the Hague Group and the Madrid Group aim to reaffirm the primacy of international law, promoting accountability and ensuring support for a just peace. He has also welcomed a decision by countries which recognize Palestine as a state.
Consistent with the case that South Africa brought before the International Court of Justice, there is growing global consensus that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Just last week, the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry found that Israel is responsible for the commission of genocide in Gaza. As Palestinians continue to face genocide and famine, we have a duty to act. South Africa has acted.
The Eswatini government says a Jamaican man deported from the U.S. to Eswatini 2 months ago has been repatriated to Jamaica. The man, named in the government statement as Oville Isaac Etoria, was one of the 5 third-country nationals deported to Eswatini in July by the Trump administration as part of its crackdown on illegal immigration. In a statement, the government of Eswatini says the other 4 from Cuba, Laos, Vietnam and Yemen are still being held in detention there while efforts to repatriate them are ongoing. President Donald Trump aims to deport millions of immigrants in the U.S. illegally, and his administration has sought to ramp up removals to third countries including South Sudan and Ghana. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says he believes that U.S. President Donald Trump could help change Chinese President Xi Jinping's stance on Russia's war in Ukraine. While addressing the media on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York, Zelensky said he believes Trump has the ability to convince Xi Jinping to end the war. The U.S. has highlighted China and India as contributors to the Russia-Ukraine war due to their ongoing purchases of oil from Moscow. That is all for now. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Chanduko Ligege.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, South Africa's athletics teams returns home from the World Athletics Championships, while Pakistan defeats Sri Lanka in the Asia Cup by 5 wickets in Dubai yesterday. I'll have details of these and other stories at 7:30.
Start your day informed, inspired, and entertained. Asanda and Peter bring you Rise and Shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time.
South Africa's highest-ranking police officer has accused the police minister of disbanding a team of highly specialized investigators to protect criminal cartels. National Police Commissioner General Fani Masemola has been testifying at the Madlanga Commission of Inquiry into Political Interference and Criminality within the police service. He says that it's now clear that the minister's actions were motivated by criminals. Demakatso Leshuro has more.
Knowing what I know now, what I consider to be irrational and inexplicable encroachment into operational issues is now explained by his desire to hold investigations against criminal cartels by disbanding the PKTT. By this I mean that evidence that has emerged which links the minister to Brown Mokhosi, to Ket Matlala and Lieutenant General Sibia. So it is clear now that that arrest of Matlala in May have assisted us to understand the real motive of the disbandment of the political killings task team.
That's General Fani Masemola, South Africa's police chief. At the heart of the Madlanga inquiry are allegations that the now suspended police minister Senzo Mchunu was not acting in the best interest of the public when he ordered that a team of investigators that had cracked difficult cases of murder, kidnappings and other complex cases to be disbanded. According to Masemola, the minister demanded that this be done immediately to leave no chance for the team to pounce on his associates. Among them, the so-called Big Five, a group of criminal kingpins that were using corrupt police officers as their personal enforcers. Two of them, Vusimuzi Ket Matlala and Katiso KT Mulefe, were arrested by this team, the political killings task team known as the PKTT. Masemola testified that the arrests may explain the pressure to shut down the unit by the minister.
The phone records of Matlala eventually did indicate to us that actually since December, operation of the 6th December 2024, that's when there was a planning to disband this political killings task team, of course, to prevent it from further doing the work that they were doing in Gauteng. So those the investigators will come with those specific recordings to indicate that there was discussion about this team's lifespan and that it should be disbanded. So at the end of the day, what I'm saying is now one understands the reason why Lieutenant General Sibia and the Minister, Brown Mokhosi and Ket Matlala, wanted to disband the team. There was no any other motive but to prevent the investigation against the cartels in Gauteng that are involved in murder, drugs, and so on.
Even more astonishing was the minister's reaction when the team made an arrest following the killing of a local politician in KwaZulu-Natal.
It was quite strange. It was first in my career to see a minister angry that police have done a good job, because here police have arrested somebody that is linked to the killing of a councillor, and he was angry that they took over this docket. The PKTT was able to do further investigation and they linked the suspect to the murder of this councillor. So that made him angry, and what surprised me was exactly that how would you be angry when police did what they're supposed to do?
Masemola says the minister's instruction to disband the team was never properly explained. Instead, when he asked for answers, he was told President Cyril Ramaphosa was already aware of it.
Then he said that the president is in agreement that the PTT be disbanded. I was quite taken aback by his revelation, since it was the president who, knowing about the effectiveness of the PKTT, had requested the PKTT to deploy to assist with the 40 cases, murder and investigations. Moreover, the president, in our last briefing on the PKTT, was satisfied with the performance. Of course, it's him saying it, so I wouldn't know whether what he's saying is true or not.
The PKTT, with about 110 members, was set up in 2018 to investigate rising political assassinations, especially in KwaZulu-Natal. It has since secured convictions against masterminds and uncovered networks linking police officers to criminal syndicates. The commission also heard that Masemola's deputy, Lieutenant General Shadrack Sibia, pushed to enforce the minister's directive even after Masemola refused to sign it off.
When I get back to work, there was this speedy response by General Sibia to
make me sign a letter to Kumalo, which I refused. Second day, I advised him how to do it. Second day, he came with the same letter, which I again refused and said, no, I'll do the matter myself. He still issued those instructions to General Kumalo. But from my side as the National Commissioner, I've never said Kumalo either close or disband the team. I never said to Lieutenant General Mkonazi either close or disband the team.
The minister is expected to appear before the commission to explain himself at some point during the hearings. Meanwhile, more witnesses are expected to corroborate these allegations and shed more light on alleged links between senior politicians, police officers, and criminal cartels. For Channel Africa News, I'm Dimakatso Leshoro in Pretoria.
Start your day right with Channel Africa Breakfast.
That smells delicious.
Live, 5 days a week.
Right, now, US President Donald Trump delivered a combative speech at the 80th United Nations General Assembly in New York, warning Russia over the ongoing war in Ukraine, rejecting moves towards Palestinian statehood, and criticizing global migration and climate policies. He also touted his administration's approach to foreign aid and international conflicts. Well, to help us unpack this and what his address means for global diplomacy and African interests, we're now joined by former US diplomat and international relations expert, J. Brooks Spector. Brooks, thanks so much indeed for joining us. I suppose not much of what he said was a surprise. He's been showing us who he is for quite a while now.
Well, good morning, Peter. Oh, and like your shirt, by the way.
Thank you.
No, people have asked me already, what did I think of the speech? And I've slept over on it. And my conclusion is he didn't say anything really new. He said it more emphatically in some ways than he has in the past. And he said it to a bigger audience than he usually has. But I guess the major point is there were no actual policy initiatives. There were no actual decisions. There were no announcements of new priorities or new efforts or new changes in policy. The point about Russia and Ukraine, that the Ukrainians still have a chance to win their war, and that the NATO nations should be able to shoot down Russian planes should they violate borders. Those were not part of the actual UN speech. What you got was vintage Donald Trump, and in a sense, we all expected it, and so the content gets discounted to some degree because it was so usual.
I am interested, though, in his relationship with Russia, because at one point it looked like they were good mates, good friends. He said that if he got elected president, he would end that war in a week. What is the state of play between Moscow and Washington now?
Well, only one person really knows, of course, and that's Donald Trump. And the watchword for the Trump administration really is mercurial. In other words, it changes depending on how he thinks at the moment, or who talks to him last, or what he's heard most recently. And it is possible that there has been something of a shift in his view. You're quite right. Certainly for the first little while of this administration, and in the previous one, he gave the impression that he and Vladimir Putin were best buddies, that they, under other circumstances, they'd be golfing or hiking buddies or something. But now it seems that just possibly it has dawned on him, it has reached his consciousness, it has made his thoughts, that the major reason that there is a war in the first place is that the Russians invaded Ukraine, and that the Ukrainians have a right to defend their territory, and so they will, and so they might do it successfully. That is something of a sea change, absolutely. But we will see if that position stays consistent in the coming days and weeks, and crucially, if it means there will be more aid going to Ukraine from the United States directly and more support financially as well as in military materiel. Those are questions that I don't think anybody knows yet.
He also launched a harsh critique of the United Nations, calling it ineffective and suggesting that it often creates problems. Some would say it's the United States and the Security Council actually creates most of the problems. I'm wondering, though, the stance that he's taking on behalf of America, is it potentially causing long-term damage in terms of US global relations, especially when you start attacking global bodies like the UN?
Well, let's be fair. Donald Trump is not the only person on the planet who thinks the United Nations, as it's currently constituted, is not particularly effective. Within the confines of Africa, you hear all kinds of complaints about the United Nations and its organizational structure, the fact that Africa is not represented on a permanent basis in the Security Council, that the decisions of the UN often do not follow through with actual action. The UN is not a perfect body by any means, and let's be fair as well that for a number of years, I think about 40 of the 80 years of its existence, actions by the Security Council were most often blocked by the then Soviet Union. And the one major international intervention militarily that it did succeed in carrying out in Korea in 1950-51 was only able to be achieved because the Soviet Union's representative boycotted the meeting when the votes were taken. In recent years, it's quite clear, though, that most of the vetoes that have been issued from by representatives at the Security Council have been vetoed by the United States, and that represents a changing quality or texture of the international environment. But I also keep pointing out to people that we complain a lot about the UN. What we're really complaining about is the Security Council and the General Assembly. You very rarely hear complaints about all the specialized bodies, things like the Food and Agricultural Organization, the World Health Organization, even the International Postal Union, for that matter, because those specialized agencies, day in and day out, do their work. They do the work that they have been mandated to do, and with limited budgets, they succeed in making the work successful, even though they're operating in some cases very difficult circumstances. And so our criticism of the UN, all of us, sometimes it focuses only on that large meeting or that smaller body of the Security Council rather than the broader perspective of the UN.
The thorny issue of Palestine, Israel, Gaza. We saw a number of countries, including countries like France, saying that we now recognize Palestine as a state. The US rejecting this completely, instead emphasizing hostage release. I wonder if this hostage release story has become a bit of a red herring, because even if the hostages were released today, this wouldn't guarantee Palestinian statehood, I'm guessing.
No, it wouldn't. But I would also add that recognition of Palestine as a state implies sovereign circumstances. It implies the ability to carry out the duties, the obligations, the privileges of a state. And the, Palestinian authorities had a observer status at the UN for some years, and simply the act of countries saying we recognize a territory as an independent state does not by itself guarantee anything. It doesn't achieve anything other than, I guess, the idea that whatever an observer mission or a representative organization now has the authority that an embassy might have, but it can't carry out the duties and functions of a sovereign nation absent having actually the power to do so. And we can talk about the Gaza, Israel, Palestine question, but we also need to the Sudan, in which a vicious civil war has been waged for a number of years. The number of casualties, the number of people suffering from famine, the death, the refugee status, arguably is in raw number terms is much larger, and the UN or the African Union, for that matter, has been unable to achieve anything approaching an end to that conflict. And you could argue also that the fact that Russia has invaded Ukraine, the UN has been unsuccessful there as well. But that I think we need to argue that in all three of those cases, it's actually not the UN's fault as much as it is the circumstances of the fact that all of the members of the UN are individual sovereign nations. Right. It's not a world government. It's not a world organization that can issue instructions to its members. It can ask them to do something. Whether they do it or not is a different question. One more point just added to it, to everything else we've talked about. The UN's suffering a financial crisis. Many of its members don't pay their regular dues. Many of the countries don't pay the special dues that have been allocated for various kinds of functions, the US included in that. And the financial crisis impacts not simply its organizational capabilities, but the ability of those specialized agencies to carry out their functions. So on the 80th anniversary of its founding and its beginnings, it has hit, if not a roadblock, it has hit a series of major speed bumps and potholes.
Right. J. Brooks Spector, always great talking to you. Thanks so much indeed for joining us on the program.
You take care. Have a good Heritage Day.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much. That's Brooks Spector, journalist, former diplomat and international relations expert, unpacking Donald Trump's speech at the UN General Assembly.
Je, una jambo lolote akilini mwako? Je, una shauku kuhusu masuala muhimu? Na je, una maoni ambayo unataka yasikike? Kweli, hili jukwaa ni la kwako. Piga simu au tuandikie kwenda WhatsApp namba alama ya kujumulisha 2760552594 na tutakupigia simu.
Mtangazaji wa habari zetu za Afrika Kusini mjini Johannesburg.
Hivyo unaweza kuwa mshirika kwenye matangazo yetu. Sio mazungumzo tu, ni fursa yako ya kuchangia maoni yako na kushirikiana na jumuiya ya wasikilizaji wanaotamani mtazamo wako. Tufuate kwenye mitandao ya kijamii. Tembelea tovuti yetu www.channelafrica.co.za na uwe tayari kushiriki na kuchangia maoni yako kwenye Channel Africa. Channel Africa, mtazamo wa Kiafrika.
From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
So as the Global Fund's 8th replenishment approaches, urgent warnings are coming from Doctors Without Borders about the risk of losing hard-won progress in the fight against HIV, tuberculosis, as well as malaria. Their latest report, Deadly Gaps, highlights how funding shortfalls are forcing life-saving programs to scale back, leaving frontline health workers struggling and patients at risk. Joining us now is Claire Waterhouse, who's Regional Advocacy Coordinator and the Head of Operational Support at Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders Southern Africa, to discuss the gaps in care and the consequences of underfunding and what needs to happen to prevent surges in preventable deaths. Claire, thanks very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me.
Just how serious is this underfunding that we're seeing?
It's really serious. We are extremely concerned about it. The Global Fund to prevent HIV, TB, and malaria has played a critical role since 2002 when it was first started in helping countries to deal with these really serious threats to public health. And what we're seeing now is that donor funding, as we know, has been very heavily impacted this year in 2025 with the US suspension of humanitarian aid that has really seriously impacted things. And that means that, for example, from the US, 3 billion of the 6 billion that they pledged, US dollars, that they pledged for this funding cycle hasn't been fulfilled yet, which leaves critical gaps for countries who are trying to fight these infectious diseases. And then there are, of course, other countries as well who have yet to pledge. We're worried that we haven't yet seen pledges from countries like the UK and Germany and others in Europe while we're coming up to the replenishment period at the end of November, which we need these pledges to be made, and we urgently need to understand how much will be available to help fight these very serious issues.
I mean, one can understand many countries that can't afford to make these contributions, and we're just talking to somebody about the UN General Assembly. But these countries that are wealthy and have the means, do we know why perhaps these pledges haven't been made as yet?
It's difficult for us to say. The reasons are probably pretty individual and pretty political. We know that there is a general move away from supporting through humanitarian funding, and that is extremely concerning to us as the world moves away from multilateralism. But the truth of the matter is that countries are less developed countries are doing their absolute best to fund these things, but there are gaps, and we do need multilateral support for this. And public health impacts all of us. When infectious diseases like malaria, HIV, and TB are not dealt with quickly and effectively, they become, they risk worsening. They risk adding burdens to health systems. They risk, increased spread. People seem to think that HIV is under control, that TB is under control, and of course we've made huge progress in the last decade or two. But HIV still causes 600,000 deaths a year, and has 1.3 million new infections every year. TB still kills 1.5 million people every year, and these are things that we can work on, that we can address. But unfortunately, funding is critical for that, and we're already seeing the impact of these gaps this year. We're already seeing that there are severe consequences. For example, malaria is the leading cause of death for children under 5. And our teams in the Central African Republic, in South Sudan, and the DRC are reporting this year increasing shortages of diagnostic tests, of medication. They're saying that there are understaffed facilities, and that has really deadly consequences for children. And that's just malaria. TB and HIV, similar things are happening, and it's extremely concerning.
How close are we to total stock outs of these important anti-malarials and antiretrovirals in some of the areas that you're working in as MSF?
It depends on the area and on the context, but I would say extremely close, and in some cases have already arrived at that point. These countries, need this support for their health systems critically. It's not a nice to have, it's a must have. And without having that, without the support that's been guaranteed over the years, that becomes a really big issue. The change in this situation was also extremely sudden. There was a very abrupt stop in the support for HIV, for TB and malaria, and that has really hit systems hard. Whereas previously huge progress was being made, community-based organizations were playing a really important and very effective role in getting treatment to patients and diagnostics. And I mean, MSF, we don't receive funding from the fund, but we work with hundreds and thousands of CBOs, community-based organizations around the world to scale back their actions, who are having to plan to do less next year because we have no idea what's going to happen with the Global Fund. And it honestly has a far wider impact than I think anyone can imagine at this point.
What kind of conversations are happening with authorities that have been dependent on these kinds of funds in the past? Is it a question of saying, well, we have a budget, we just need to allocate more to health?
That's a tricky question to answer. And of course, local and domestic authorities do need to play a role in this. They need to see what's happening and they need to adjust. But because there is so much uncertainty right now from what's happening with the Global Fund, it's very difficult for governments to plan this at the moment. It's difficult for them to know what will they have and what won't they have. It also is, we have to be honest, it's not viable for some of these really less developed countries to be able to do this. And the people who are hit are the most vulnerable people. And the impact of this, instead of falling on governments, is tending to fall on patients. Patients are then being asked to pay more for care or to pay for care at all, which many vulnerable groups of people, if you think about South Sudan, if you think about the Democratic Republic of Congo, you think about Malawi, but also think globally. We've seen impacts in Honduras, for example, in Belarus. These people, they are not able to carry the burden of their care. And yes, of course, governments should step up too, but what we urgently need is donors to step up. Donor countries need to step up and pledge to the Global Fund so that we don't undo all of the amazing progress that's been made in HIV, TB, and malaria over the years. We need to have an idea of what's happening, and we need it soon because we need to be able to plan, governments need to be able to plan, and we need to identify, what is going to happen to people themselves, which is our greatest concern. As always, it is the most vulnerable people who are the most impacted by these kinds of global political issues.
Claire, we're going to have to leave it there, but we certainly hope that action is taken and taken urgently. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
That's Claire Waterhouse, Regional Advocacy Coordinator and Head of Operational Support at MSF Southern Africa. It's time for your news headlines. Here's Chanduko Ligege.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Uganda's Electoral Commission has cleared 81-year-old President Yoweri Museveni to seek re-election in polls due to be held early next year, which could extend his rule in the East African nation to nearly half a century. Calls are mounting for incumbent Malawian President Lazarus Chakwera to accept defeat in the September 16, 2025 elections and congratulate the projected winner Peter Mutharika. And Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump's position on the war with Russia has changed direction after he said Ukraine could take back all the territory it's lost. A full news update will follow at 8 a.m. Central African Time.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Let's take a look at what's happening in the world of sport as we say good morning once again to Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning once again from the Sports Day. So, Junior World 400-meter champion Odemi Ogon has described competing in the 4x400-meter relay final at the World Senior Championships in Tokyo, where South Africa ended an 8-year medal drought as the best feeling of his young career. The 20-year-old was the youngest athlete in the final, running alongside Wade van Niekerk, Zaidi Nene, as well as Live Play. Ogon, who's coached by La Wenzel, told SABC Sport that winning the bronze medal at senior level ranks amongst the biggest achievements of his career, admitting he never expected to return home with a medal hanging around his neck. Now, Team South Africa sent a total of 48 athletes to Tokyo, returned with just one medal on Tuesday morning, proudly carried by Ocon.
It was a good feeling, running against guys that I look up to as well. It was just a thing of me going out there and keeping my head straight. Obviously, I couldn't see anything, but I could obviously still continue running. I didn't care what that didn't stop me, so I just went out there and do what I enjoy.
On to football news now. SAFA President Dr. Danny Jordaan has praised the South African under-20 national team for making history. Amajita will become the first South African national team to participate in a FIFA World Cup as African champions. They leave for Chile later on this afternoon, where they will make their 5th World Cup appearance since 1997. The 24-team tournament kicks off on Sunday with the final scheduled for the 19th of October. The SAFA President Jordaan has hailed Amajita for making football history in South Africa.
It is the first time that we have an under-20 team going to the FIFA World Cup as the champions of Africa, and therefore the best football team in Africa. You're going there, having beaten Nigeria and having beaten Morocco in your march to be crowned African champions.
One of the Amajita players to watch at the World Cup is 18-year-old goalkeeper Fletcher Smythe-Lowe. Now, Lowe, who plays in Portugal, is one of the 2 overseas-based players in this Amajita team.
For me, the number one thing that we have to do is we have to go to the World Cup, and we have to play as well as we can, with as much spirit as we can, and with the best attitude that we can to make the country proud. And then, obviously, the fruits that will result from this, no one knows, but we think we have the capacity to win.
We'll stay with football news, though. Further afield, Kylian Mbappe scored twice as La Liga leaders Real Madrid continued their impressive start to the season with a comfortable victory at Levante. So with his side 2-1 ahead, the Frenchman's double in the space of 2 minutes sealed a 6-minute win from their opening 6 games and move 5 points clear of Barcelona at the top of the table. Mbappe got his first from a penalty spot in the 64th minute, chipping in a panaka over Levante goalkeeper Matthew Ryan. He then took his total to 7 league goals this term with a deft finish after being slipped in by Ardi Güler. Earlier, Vinicius Jr. had put Real in front with a superb strike, bending the ball into the corner of the net with his outside of his boot from a tight angle. Meanwhile, Barcelona can reduce Real Madrid's lead at the top of the table when they visit Oviedo on Thursday. And finally, Pakistan boosted their hopes of reaching the Asia Cup final by edging to a 5-wicket victory against Sri Lanka in Abu Dhabi. So after their disappointing as well as controversial defeats by rivals India, Pakistan slipped to 80 for 5 in pursuit of 134 before a partnership of 58 between Hussein Talat as well as Mohammad Nawaz rescued them, needing 46 from 40 balls. Nawaz hit Wanadu Harasanga, who had 2 for 5 after his first 2 overs for back-to-back boundaries. And when a leg spinner returned to bowl the 17th over, Talat then struck another 2 fours. So that swung the occasion from 26 runs needed from 24 balls to 14 runs then needed from 18 balls. And left-hander Nawaz added 3 more sixes to seal the victory with about 2 overs to spare. Nawaz finished on 38 not out with Talat unbeaten on 32. While Pakistan would have not been eliminated with a defeat, they would have needed a series of results to go their way, a situation now facing Sri Lanka. So India as well as Bangladesh, who won the opening Super 4 games, will meet in Dubai later on today, while the top 2 teams in the Super 4 will then contest Sunday's final. It concludes your sports news this hour. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, our email address is newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. I'm back with the final sports update on Africa Rise and Shine in the next hour. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa Update on Channel Africa with Lulu Kabu.
Mozambique's opposition leader Venancio Mondlane has been charged with incitement to terrorism and disobedience. He faces a total of 5 charges. The charges relate to post-election violence that left hundreds of people dead. What punishment is he looking at?
The most severe charges are 2. One is incitement for terrorism, and also is being charged for mobilizing people for terrorism. vandalism during the protests. These charges are really serious and severe. If he is condemned, is found guilty, he could serve 10 years plus years in jail, meaning that he would be banned from political participation, mainly for the 2028 and 2029 electoral cycle.
The director of CDD, the Center for Democracy and Development, Adriano Novunga.
Africa Update with Lulu Kapu, 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time.
It's time now to take a look at what's happening on the business front. And on top of those affairs for us is Buntle Headbush. Good morning.
Business News on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter, and a very good morning to our listeners. In our top business story at this hour, Total Energy's sale of a minority stake in a Nigerian onshore oil producer has fallen through. The company says this is a setback to its strategy to sell mature, polluting assets and pay down debt. Total agreed in July 2024 to sell its 10% stake in the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited to Mauritius-based Chapal Energies, but the regulatory approval granted for the sale last October has now been withdrawn because the two sides have not met the financial commitments required to complete the deal. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, addressing the UN General Assembly in New York, says trade is one of the most important instruments to mobilize domestic resources for development. He says it's concerning that geopolitical shocks and unprecedented trade policy volatility are destabilizing the global economy and jeopardizing a critical source of development. The president says unilateral trade practices and economic coercion have a detrimental impact on many nations. He told the Assembly that South Africa's G20 presidency calls for inclusive economies.
Our country's G20 presidency is a significant opportunity for South Africa to advocate for Africa's development agenda and to amplify African voices in global economic governance for a continent that is irreversibly on the rise. As member states of the United Nations, we have all adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. However, many of these goals remain elusive.
Meanwhile, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the tariffs imposed on South Africa by the administration of President Donald Trump were a wake-up call for the country.
What President Trump did was a wake-up call for us. Not so much because we were not trading with other countries, but a wake-up call in saying that we need to upgrade our relations, our trade relations with many other countries in the world. We are a repository of critical natural resources that we want the world to buy from us, but also buy from us from a value-added point of view.
African countries have been urged to collaborate and trade as one with other major economies around the world. This came out of the South Africa-China Trade and Investment Promotion Conference in Johannesburg. More than 400 leading Chinese enterprises from 44 cities across 13 provinces were present, covering textile, appliances, electronics, building materials, furniture and other areas. President of the Black Business Council, Elias Munache, says the G20 presidency also plays a key role in this matter.
There are 54 countries. On what basis then do we trade with Russia on equal footing as a continent, as opposed to individual countries dealing with China on bilateral or multilateral basis? We need them to look at this thing holistically as a continent.
Further afield, Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba has launched its largest ever artificial intelligence language model today, known as the Qwen 3 Max. The company says the model is its most powerful to date and contains more than 1 trillion parameters or variables that determine how an AI system processes information. The model also shows particular strength in code generation and autonomous agent capabilities. This means that the AI system requires fewer human prompts than a chatbot chatbot like ChatGPT and can make decisions and take action independently towards a goal set by the human user. The company announced earlier this year that it plans to invest $53 billion in AI-related infrastructure over the next 3 years as competition intensifies in that sector. And now for a look at our indicators. $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,488 naira this morning. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 15. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 55. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 63. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 rial 31. Russia, 83 rubles 59. In India, it's 88 rupees 67. China, 7 yuan 11, and South Africa, $1 is trading at 17 rand 28 cents. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,764 per ounce. Platinum, $1,494 per ounce this morning, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $67.79 a barrel. And those are your business news. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co or give us a call on +27 11 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Hetbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Hi there. Do you want to elevate your business and give it a voice in South Africa and Africa as a whole? Well, in that case, let Channel Africa make this a possibility. Channel Africa is willing to advertise your business for as little as 30,000 rands or $1,719.18. To get access to these great rates, send all requests to mokoenata@SABC. That's MOKOENATA@SABC. Channel Africa, the African perspective. Bringing you the energy, news, and good vibes to kickstart your day. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
South Africa's Minister of Science, Technology and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, has highlighted the strategic importance of the country's first ever G20 presidency, the first time the role has been held by an African nation. Speaking at the third G20 Research and Innovation Ministerial meeting at the CSIR International Conference Centre in the country's capital, Pretoria, Nzimande said that South Africa's presidency will be carried as an African presidency under the theme of solidarity, equality and sustainability. Channel Africa reporter Michael Mbewe has more.
This ministerial meeting is a culmination of a number of G20-related activities that have been undertaken over the past few months as South Africa's Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, under the auspices of the Research and Innovation Working Group leading to the G20 Summit of Leaders in a short while away. Addressing the third G20 Research and Innovation Ministerial meeting in Pretoria, Minister Nzimande said being the first in the African soil, the presidency would be guided by the theme of solidarity, equality and sustainability and used to advance Africa's priorities.
The strategic importance of our G20 presidency, as you may be aware, this is the first time that an African country is assigned the role of G20 president. And for the duration of our presidency, we will be guided by our country theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability. Even though the role of the G20 president is assigned to South Africa, we view our presidency as an African presidency.
Nzimande reaffirmed South Africa's unwavering support for the AU's science strategy for Africa and leverage on the G20 summit to support Africa's initiatives.
For this reason, we will also seek to strengthen our support for the African Union's Science, Technology and Innovation Strategy for Africa 2034, in short known as TISA 2034. We will also use our G20 presidency to support
continental priorities such as science, technology and innovation funding, health innovation, climate technologies, digital inclusion, and the development of a sovereign research agenda for Africa.
Chief Director for Multilateralism at South Africa's Department of Science, Technology and Innovation, Mampe Chaba, stressed that while the G20 brings diverse agendas, South Africa is focused on ensuring the needs of the developing world are prioritized under the country's theme of solidarity, equality and sustainability.
From the DSTI's perspective, we are excited to pursue a science, technology and innovation agenda at a global level. But for us, representing the needs of the developing world is most crucial. So in our gathering, we have all the G20 countries. They come with their own agendas, but it's important that we put on the table issues of development, issues of sustainability, issues of equality. And that's why our theme as a country is solidarity, equality and sustainability.
She noted that South Africa builds on the momentum of recent G20 presidencies led by other developing nations, saying the focus remains on technologies, capacity building and science infrastructure, with science described as the ultimate equalizer capable of helping countries leapfrog development.
So we are fortunate in the sense that before South Africa chaired the G20, there were 4 other developing countries that chaired G20: China, Indonesia, India, and then Brazil. So the kinds of discussions that had started 4 years ago were very much focused on what do developing countries need in terms of technologies, in terms of capacity building, in terms of infrastructure, science infrastructure as well. Because we believe science is the ultimate equalizer. If we invest in science, even those that are lagging behind are going to leapfrog and not have to start investing from zero in science. So that's what we've been trying to push in all our deliverables.
Chaba urged member states to embrace open innovation by sharing data to drive equality and collective progress, adding that all 10 of South Africa's deliverables have been adopted and will be carried forward through major global bodies.
Let's share data. Let's share. That's why we talk about open innovation, so that we equalize and develop at the same pace. And we are fortunate that all of the work that we've invested in, all of the 10 deliverables have been adopted, have been concluded, which will leave a long-lasting impact. They don't depend on who's the next chair of the G20. They will be implemented through international organizations like OECD, UNESCO, and GBIF.
CSIR Group Executive for the Advanced Chemistry and Life Sciences Division, Rachel Shikwamba, highlighted the cooperative spirit of the G20 research and innovation discussions, noting strong support for South Africa's presidency and emphasis on skills, women in STEM, biodiversity, climate resilience, and Africa's data sovereignty.
Dialogues have been very cordial in the spirit of cooperation. The discussion has been very supportive of the South African presidency, really in the space of the Research and Innovation Working Group, where truly it is about science, and science to bring solutions to humanity for common challenges. So that has been the spirit, that of complementarity and tackling issues directly. We've been talking about a whole range of issues of how we deal with skills development, how we get women involved in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, issues of how we conserve biodiversity in the context of climate change, looking at disaster management, but also ensuring that we think deeply about Africa managing its data, its information.
Michael Mbewe, Channel Africa News, Johannesburg.
G20 in Africa, exclusive to Channel Africa, championing Africa through solidarity, equality, and sustainability.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa told the UN's General Assembly that trade was now being used as a weapon against a number of countries in the world. In a veiled swipe at the United States, he also used the opportunity to remind member states that South Africa was hosting the G20 for the very first time on the African continent. Sherwin Bryce-Bees picks up the story for us from New York.
His first address to the General Assembly wearing both the hat of South African president and that of the G20, and the issue of reforming the multilateral trading system was front and center.
Trade is one of the most important instruments to mobilize domestic resources for development. It is concerning that geopolitical shocks and unprecedented trade policy volatility are destabilizing the global economy and jeopardizing a critical source of development finance. In fact, trade is now being used as a weapon against a number of countries in the world. We must redouble our efforts to strengthen the link between trade and development. Unilateral trade practices and economic cohesion have a detrimental impact on many nations.
Ramaphosa also talked up advancing cooperation and solidarity between nations, no less in forums like the G20, where he highlighted 4 key priorities: strengthening disaster resilience and response by addressing impacts of climate-induced disasters, ensuring debt sustainability for low-income countries, mobilizing finance for a just energy transition by encouraging investments in renewables without foregoing baseload energy sources, and harnessing critical minerals for inclusive growth and sustainable development.
These priorities reflect South Africa's commitment to addressing global challenges and promoting inclusive growth and sustainable development. Our country's G20 presidency is a significant opportunity for South Africa to advocate for Africa's development agenda and to amplify African voices in global economic governance for a continent that is irreversibly on the rise.
He lamented increased military spending, while core development priorities were placed on the back burner, while pointing to the security and humanitarian catastrophes in Sudan, the DRC, and Gaza, among others.
Consistent with the case that South Africa brought before the International Court of Justice, there is growing global consensus. There is growing global consensus that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Just last week, the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry found that Israel is responsible for the commission of genocide in Gaza. As Palestinians continue to face genocide and famine, we have a duty to act. South Africa has acted in the interest of saving lives by insisting that the International Court of Justice should make a ruling that indeed genocide is being committed in Gaza and that it should stop. And we stand here to say it must stop.
Ramaphosa again used the platform to call for the lifting of the economic embargo on Cuba, which he said caused untold damage to the country's economy, and asserted the responsibility of UN member states to reaffirm the right of self-determination for the people of Western Sahara, and on the next UN Secretary-General, who will be elected during the current 80th session of the General Assembly.
South Africa reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the empowerment of women and their full, equal, and meaningful participation in all spheres of life. Yes, we would support also the election of a female Secretary General of the United Nations.
As he reflected on the 8 decades that the UN has been around, President Ramaphosa called on member states to seize the opportunity for a strong and more capable United Nations through reinvigorating the Security Council, pressing the intergovernmental negotiations on reforming its structure to move to text-based negotiations, calling the lack of permanent representation for Africa unjust and unacceptable, and urging member states to rise to meet the moment by ensuring political, economic and social freedom for all of humanity. I'm Sherwin Bryce Pease in New York.
8 o'clock Central African time. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much indeed for joining us. This is the third and final hour of the program, Rise and Shine. My name is Peter Ndoro. Asanda is away today. And we're broadcasting on the internet at www.channelafrica.co.za, as well as our social media platforms. You may be able to see us even now. Thanks for tuning in. Coming up in this next half an hour, we'll be taking a look at a number of issues, WHO funding amongst them, and also we'll be taking a wrap at what's been happening in the news in West Africa in particular with our regular commentator, Dr. Matsanga. All right, all of that still to come, but first let's catch you up with the news as we say good morning to Chanduko Ligege.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Ugandan Electoral Commission has cleared President Yoweri Museveni to seek re-election in next year's elections. The East African country's longtime leader in 2026 will be up against his political rival Bobi Wine, who has built a large youth following. Museveni is applauded for stabilizing the country, growing the economy and combating HIV and AIDS. But his critics have slammed him for cracking down on the opposition, human rights abuses and corruption. Kayelihle Kumalo has more.
Ugandan President Museveni has been at the helm since 1986. He once argued that Africa's problem was not its people, but leaders who overstay in power. Museveni has twice overseen constitutional changes, removing term and age limits to remain in office. The veteran leader has pledged to prioritize public safety, expand health care, and free education. His critics have accused him of using state patronage to cling to power, and these are claims he rejects.
Calls are mounting for incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera of Malawi to accept defeat in the September 16, 2025 elections and congratulate the projected winner, Peter Mutharika. Chakwera is Malawi Congress Party torchbearer, while Peter Mutharika represents Democratic Progressive Party in the polls. The Malawi Electoral Commission is expected to declare the winner later today. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed concern on the security and humanitarian situations in the DRC, Sudan, Gaza, and other parts of the world. He says there are other countries that continue to violate international law and defy UN resolutions and rulings from bodies like the International Court of Justice. President Ramaphosa added that the establishment of the Hague Group and the Madrid Group aim to reaffirm the primacy of international law, promoting accountability and ensuring support for a just peace. He has also welcomed a decision by countries which recognize Palestine as a state.
Consistent with the case that South Africa brought before the International Court of Justice, there is growing global consensus. That Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Just last week, the United Nations Independent International Commission of Inquiry found that Israel is responsible for the commission of genocide in Gaza. As Palestinians continue to face genocide and famine, we have a duty to act. South Africa has acted.
The Eswatini government says a Jamaican man deported from the United States to Eswatini 2 months ago has been repatriated to Jamaica. The man, named in the government statement as Oville Isaac Etoria, was one of the 5 third-country nationals deported to Eswatini in July by the Trump administration as part of its crackdown on illegal immigration. In a statement, the government of Eswatini says the other 4 from Cuba, Laos, Vietnam and Yemen are still being held in detention there, while efforts to repatriate them are ongoing. President Donald Trump aims to deport millions of immigrants in the U.S. illegally, and his administration has sought to ramp up removals to third countries, including South Sudan and Ghana. Also in the news, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump's position on the war with Russia has changed direction after he said Ukraine could take back all the territory it's lost. The two leaders met in New York on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly. Zelensky has welcomed what he called a new closeness in Trump's position. The BBC's Tom Bateman reports.
Donald Trump has shifted positions on Ukraine and Russia multiple times now, from his Oval Office ambush of Mr. Zelensky, now lurching back into much clearer support for him. At the UN, Mr. Trump called Russia a paper tiger, saying it was not a real military power. Western diplomats have welcomed the remarks, but say they should still be taken with a pinch of salt. Even so, Ukraine's key European allies are running with what he said.
That is all for now. For any news stories you'd like to share with us, please send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za, or you can call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa News, I am Chandruko Ligege.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
And coming up in your sports news this hour, Team South Africa returns home from the World Athletics Championships in Tokyo, Japan, while Novak Djokovic confirms that he'll play at the Shanghai Masters this coming weekend. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8:30.
Wake up, Africa. Peter Ndoro and Asanda Peta are here to help you rise and shine. Weekdays, 6 till 9 a.m. Central African Time. Only on Channel Africa.
We turn now to West Africa, where several key political and legal developments are making headlines, from deportations sparking human rights concerns to countries withdrawing from international courts, constitutional changes, and shifting security alliances. The region remains at the center of complex debates on governance, justice, and democracy. And to help us unpack these stories, as always, we're now joined by Dr. David Matsanga, who's a political scientist, international relations expert, as well as a conflict resolution specialist. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Dr. Matsanga. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you very much, Peter Ndoro. I can see you are in the real African attire. Unfortunately, I am still in this sweat, and I will remove it and go to the African attire. Good morning.
Good morning, good morning, good morning. So let's start with this case of the 11 West African nationals deported from the United States to Ghana. Their lawyers say that they were denied their rights. How significant, though, is this case, do you think, for broader debates on migration, human rights, and US-Africa relations?
First of all, it is sad that people are forced to go where they are not, where they don't want. People are fled from places and they are gone to the United States. I've written to the International Court of Justice to seek an opinion as to whether people should be forced. You know, one of the problems that Africa has is that we don't use the courts. Let's use the ICJ, especially ICJ, not ICC. Let's use the ICJ to get America on law, legally. America should not be deporting people, taking them to a place where they are not wanted, where they may fled from persecution. So this is something that every person, any human rights lawyer, any legal expert of international law like me, I would try to struggle to make sure that I get that opinion from the ICJ. It is sad that these 11 Africans find themselves in an unfamiliar territory, leaving their families behind, deported, removed, forcefully, at times tortured, beaten up. It is sad.
And staying with questions of justice, in the UK, a Nigerian man living with a disability, Anthony George, has won an appeal against deportation after nearly 4 decades in the country. I mean, what does this ruling say about migration policy in Europe, and maybe lessons that African states can draw from this?
African states should first of all begin by making sure conditions in Africa are very good for their people to stay in. 2, the foreign policy of the United Kingdom under the Conservative Party created a lot of chaos. Another one under Tony Blair created a lot of refugees. You remember Zimbabwean refugees who went out in huge numbers under Tony Blair policy of isolation of Zimbabwe. And I condemned this and told Tony Blair on the floor in Brighton that you are engaging, you must engage Mugabe, don't allow refugees to go. And now in Nigeria, the foreign and the Commonwealth Office itself and the British government know that Nigeria's human rights records are not good. They have continued to dine with them. I have told David Lamy, my friend, the foreign secretary, I told him, why do you dine with a man who is actually slaughtering people at home? And then now you want to throw these same refugees back to the man who is waiting to slaughter them. I think the Labour government this week will have to tackle this problem of refugees because we don't want it to turn our majority leadership, which we got after elections, into a nightmare. They have to tackle this refugee chaos that was created by the Conservatives, Preet Patel, and a group of Kemi who have actually been here creating chaos for us.
In Guinea, voters have approved a new constitution extending the president's term limits. Yeah. What does this outcome mean for democracy and political stability in Guinea? We've seen this story so many times, haven't we?
Peter, how do you extend the constitution when you have locked up political opponents? All political parties are not taking place. That guy has been used by the American CIA to muzzle up Guinea Conakry. He's finished. Is one of the few confused generals that I've seen in West Africa. I've visited all the other three generals, Burkina Faso, Niger, Mali. These have brains. But that one has no brains. And I think somebody else will come up, but not him. Now you see that constitution, the constitution is a sham. Some of the people did not take part. Some were forced to vote. So that is now a disaster, an accident in waiting.
France has suspended its counter-terrorism cooperation with Mali after tensions over recent arrests. How do you think this will affect the fight against violent extremist groups in the Sahel? And could it further shift security partnerships towards other powers like Russia?
Let me tell you, France has been a very dangerous colonial master. It has created chaos. Look in Syria, it was France that went and attacked Syria and created ISIS in Syria with Obama. You see, the world needs to be told the truth. Syria had a fight with Israel. Okay, their fights were there, but it was not at a massive scale where refugees left Syria and they went away. It is France that caused that problem. Now France in Africa has been creating too many problems for the people, especially for Mali. Since they left, since Gota came to power, my brother Gota has tried to fight insurgency. He has succeeded almost 90%, eliminating the terrorists that have occupied the other parts of Mali. France is not happy. Of course, if you look at the reports, you find that France also funds these terrorists at times. That's why they are now not happy. And why the Free States left ICC is because France is the funder for ICC. 90% of the salaries of ICC is France. It pays. So they cannot stay in a club. And yet they are the only countries, Peter Ndoro, let me tell you, the only countries in Africa that have signed for the court in Arusha to be number 1 country is Burkina Faso, number 2 Mali, number 3 Niger. The rest of these big countries talk about, they think they want to take their national to ICC. They should leave this club. France is the master of the ICC. I have been on this subject for almost 25 years. So I know We created the International Criminal Court with Kofi Annan in Rome. I was there in Rome. I sat there waiting for Mr. Kofi Annan. Kumbe, Mr. Kofi Annan was using it for milk as a cash cow after retirement. So this ICC thing linked with France, they are going to tackle Mali. So Mali is right to say enough is enough. You can break it. Go.
Dr. Matsanga, we're going to have to leave it there. The line is breaking, but I think we pretty much covered the top stories that we were wanting to unpack. Thank you so much. Always good to talk to you. Thank you for your time. All right, that's Dr. Matsanga. We just lost him towards the end there, but I think he expressed himself fully there on those issues.
Você é fluente em português? É apaixonado por rádio e quer trabalhar na África do Sul? Você tem documentos que o qualificam para trabalhar na África do Sul? Nesse caso, podemos ter uma oportunidade para você trabalhar no Canal África. Envie seu currículo e demonstração para Canal África at newsroom@channelafrica.co.za. Lembre-se, se você não receber alguma resposta nossa em 14 dias, isso significa que você não foi selecionado. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
We are all threads in the African tapestry. This Heritage Day, we honor every single one.
Health ministers, development partners and technical experts are convening in Johannesburg this week for a 3-day regional meeting on innovative health financing for Africa. And this is organized by the WHO Regional Office for Africa as well as the Global Fund. With many countries facing shrinking donor support, rising debt burdens and increasing health needs, the stakes are high. How to mobilize sustainable financing, align partners and accelerate progress towards universal health coverage. Well, to help us understand the goals, the challenges and the possible breakthroughs, I'm now joined by Dr. Chukwujekwu Ogochukwu, who's the team lead for health financing and investment at WHO Africa. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me. Good morning.
Perhaps we can begin by asking what are the top priorities that WHO hopes that this meeting might deliver on by its conclusion, and how will those outcomes translate into change on the ground?
Thank you very much for that question. For us, there are some key things we hope to get out of this meeting. One would be for countries to talk through and share amongst themselves the challenges being faced, what each of them is currently doing. I mean, we have countries coming from across different parts of Africa. Then we also would want countries to understand what is available, what are the policy options that they can take to make a difference in responding to the really challenging times that we are in, but also to understand what instruments and what support and facilities are available from different partners to complement their own domestic public financing in driving access to health. And largely, we hope to build a community of people, policymakers, technicians across the continent who will continue to dialogue and to solve the problems that we foresee we will continue to face moving forward, but to find practical ways of dealing with them, learning from each other all along the way. So these are some of the, concrete outcomes we hope to come out. But and finally, one of the key things is that each country, as they leave here, will be able to go away with a very clear idea of at least one thing or one or two partners that they can work with moving forward to take forward what they are currently doing in their countries, and who will be able to support and work with them along the way. Over.
You talk there about domestic financing, and we hear that many African countries still rely heavily on external aid. I wonder how realistic it is for them to shift towards greater domestic financing, given the current fiscal conditions and constraints a lot of these countries are facing.
Thanks for that question. It's really, I think this is the crux of what we are all grappling with, of course. In our countries, or in our region, several of the countries are, as you know, classified as lower middle income countries or low income countries, and often may not find it easy to quickly mobilize or to fully finance health from their domestic resources. Having said that, I think the key thing is having the commitment to health, to see health as the real investment that it is, and whatever a country can do. I mean, I think if one country can make progress in increasing progressively, no matter how small you're adding each year, it makes a key difference. And then added to that, when there is that commitment and that leadership from a country, then where you still have external sources coming to you, there are still countries that are receiving grants. We know there is reduction from some donors, mainly bilateral, but we also know that some external financing remains available to countries. And so making all of those work together more effectively, more efficiently becomes even more critical. Countries have, endorsed the Lusaka agenda to align to work with partners and for partners to align to their national priorities. And if we can at least move towards making that operationalizing it, making it a reality for countries, I think it makes a huge difference in supplementing their domestic resources. Where even if it's not entirely there, coming from domestic pockets, where external funds are able to flow through national systems or align with what the government has set out in its strategies to do, then it works and functions as well as their domestic resources, while giving space and time for countries to slowly build up to where they need to be. But as I said, it doesn't take away from the need for our countries' governments to commit to making that increase, even if it's a little bit a day. Over.
I wonder which types of innovative financing mechanisms, for example, levies, maybe even bonds, blended finance, show the most promise in the African context. And what evidence do we have that's pointing us in a particular direction?
Thanks. In difficult times, we all we try out some of all that is available. On the one hand, I will say things like the health taxes, the levies, have proven already very effective in health. Many countries, not just in Africa, but across the world, have levied different, degrees of taxes on tobacco, on alcohol, and even on sugar-sweetened beverages and other kinds of products. And these have generated revenues that we know they've been successful in generating revenue for countries. In some cases, some of these have, been able to be reverted back to the health sector to support. But conversely, they have also over time supported in reducing or ameliorating the use of these products. For some of the other instruments, the debt conversion for health, even using the social impact bonds, these are largely still being tried out, I would say, to a smaller degree in the health sector, but we know that they've been used elsewhere and have worked. The debt conversion, I mean, we do know where it's been. Our partners, the Global Fund, have supported some of this and been able to release some of that funds to go back to the countries to be reinvested in the health sector. And I think in the few countries where that has happened, we've seen some success with it. And for the social impact bonds, granted, some of these are still a few programs that are being implemented in a few countries, one of which I think is going on in South Africa. There's another in Kenya. But we think they're showing promise. They have not been going on for very long, but we do see that they show some promise for countries in being able to crowd in other resources, because the key thing there is where the government cannot do this entirely by themselves, then you're having these instruments that allow others to co-invest with you in a way that is less risky for all, and yet allows the government to achieve their goals. And so in terms of helping the countries to crowd in resources towards achieving health goals, I think that we are seeing good results there, and we'll have to see over the longer term how sustainable these can be. But I think there is room for optimism here. Over.
How can partner alignment and coordination be improved, do you think, so that multiple funders don't pull countries in different directions or even duplicate efforts?
It seems a little bit simplistic to say this, but a lot of this starts from the leadership of our governments themselves, our policymakers, and a clear sense of direction and outlining of what the national priorities for health are. Without this as a very, very strong basis, we find that it's even more difficult to get partners to align to work together towards that common goal. When anyone brings funding to a country, inherently there are likely to be other interests, or for some of them, they are set up to support very specific mechanisms. But being able to work in a complementary manner helps when there is a clear plan and a clear strategic direction for the country. And then you can then work with the partners to agree on which areas that they can support in complementarity to the domestic resources. But where governments aren't clear about the direction they're going, or where there is a sense of dissent within, if you have different parts of our government going in different directions, then it's also easy for different partners to kind of drag everyone off in all of those different directions without being able to come together. So as simplistic as it sounds, I think it's extremely difficult to move towards partner alignment, partner harmonization, where the recipient government itself is not able to demonstrate its clear vision and to show the leadership in saying to partners, we need you to align to a vision, or perhaps this is not the best place for you to work. But for all of the partners, within the region globally, there continue to be the dialogue to move better towards what countries can, what countries want, what countries have planned to do. But as I said, that all of those efforts can help and can support, but in the end, there's really no substitute for a country that knows exactly where it's going, and it's simply looking for the support to be able to get there, rather than the country that is being led by the different priorities of the partners. Over.
All right, that's where we're going to have to leave it. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but thank you very, very much indeed for joining us. And we certainly wish you the best of luck with the deliberations this week.
Thank you very much. And again, happy to be here.
That's Dr. Chukwujekwu Ogochukwu, who's the team lead for health financing and investment at WHO Africa, speaking to me ahead of an important gathering, taking a look at this, desperate situation in terms of funding healthcare. It's 8:30. Let's catch you up with your news headlines. Here's Chanduko Ligege.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Good morning. Voters in Guinea have backed a new constitution that could allow coup leader Mamadi Doumbouya to run for president if he chooses to. Ugandan Electoral Commission has cleared President Yoweri Museveni's election in next year's elections, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says his U.S. counterpart Donald Trump's position on the war with Russia has changed direction after he said Ukraine could take back all the territory it's lost. I'll be back with a full bulletin at 9 a.m. Central African Time.
SABC News. Headlines. The African Perspective.
And it's time now for your sport. Here's Musibudi Makura.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thank you so much, Peter. Very good morning once again from the Sports Desk. Junior World 400-meter champion Odeme Okon described competing in the 4x400-meter relay final at the World Athletics Championships in Tokyo, where South Africa ended an 8-year medal drought as the best feeling of his young career. So the 20-year-old was the youngest athlete in the final, running alongside the likes of Wade van Niekerk, Zagiti Nene, as well as Live Play. Okon, who is coached by La Wenzel, told SABC Sport that winning the bronze medal at a senior level ranks among the biggest achievements, and also admitting he never expected to return home with a medal hanging around his neck. South Africa sent a group of 48 athletes to Tokyo, returning with just one medal on Tuesday with the 4x400-meter relay team.
It was a good feeling, running against guys that I look up to as well. It was just a thing of me going out there and keeping my head straight. Obviously, I couldn't see anything, but I could obviously still continue running. I didn't care what that didn't stop me, so I just went out there and do what I enjoy.
Now, Okon, who ran the race of his life in difficult conditions, battling a heavy downpour, he managed to hand the baton to his idol and 400-meter world record holder Wade van Niekerk, who then passed it to Zagiti Nene to secure the bronze medal. He admitted that visibility was almost impossible under those weather conditions.
No, I couldn't see anything. I didn't expect it to rain. Obviously, I compete with glasses, so I was just like, I didn't expect it to rain. So as soon as I saw the rain, I knew that, there's going to be a problem. There's going to be a problem. But I was like, you know what? Let me just continue running. Getting into the back straight, I remember not seeing anything. And I was just like, damn. But I saw the other athletes cutting in, and I just continued running. I was like, you know what? Let me get into that home straight. And then seeing Wade there waving his hand up to me, I could see him. Then I was like, yeah, no, I'm good.
On to tennis news now. Novak Djokovic will return to action in Shanghai next month in his first tournament since the US Open semi-final defeat by Carlos Alcaraz. Organizers having confirmed the news on Tuesday. Now, the Serbian, who has won the event 4 times and will be making his 14th appearance in the main draw as he looks to finish the season strong after being shut out of the Grand Slams by world number 1 Alcaraz as well as the world number 2 Jannik Sinner. The 24-time Grand Slam winner has struggled to find the way past the new duo dominating men's tennis in the last 2 seasons, but also said in New York that the best of 3 set matches gave him a better chance. The 38-year-old reached the final in Shanghai just last year, losing to Sinner in straight sets. Now, this year's tournament will run from the 1st of October until the 12th of October. While former world number 3 Elina Svitolina has ended her season very early to focus on her mental health, with the Ukrainian saying that she is not in the right emotional space to continue playing the season. Svitolina, who returned to the circuit in 2023 following maternity leave, reached the quarterfinals of the Australian Open as well as the French Open this year, but then lost in the 3rd round of Wimbledon and also went on to out of the first hurdle at Flushing Meadows just a few months back. Now, Svitolina, now ranked 13th in the world, said she needed time to rest as well as recharge. Svitolina had a strong 2025, finishing with a 35-14 record and 1 title, and the WTA 250 clay tournament in Rouen, France in April of this year. She also had quarterfinal showings at the Australian as well as the French Open. And finally, Kylian Mbappe scored twice as La Liga leaders Real Madrid continued their impressive start to the season with a comfortable victory at Levante. Now, with his side 2-1 ahead, the Frenchman's double in the space of about 2 minutes sealed the sixth win of their opening 6 games and also moved them 5 points clear of rivals Barcelona at the top of the table. Mbappe got his first from a penalty spot in the 64th minute, chipping in a panaka over Levante goalkeeper Mathieu Ryan. He then took his tally to 7 goals this season so far with a deft finish after being slipped in by Ardi Gulam. Earlier, it was Vinicius Jr. who put Real Madrid in front with a superb strike, bending the ball into the corner of the net with the outside of his boot from a very tight angle. Meanwhile, Barcelona can reduce Real Madrid's lead at the top of the table with a visit to Oviedo on Thursday. Well, that's a wrap of your sports news this morning on Africa Rise and Shine. For any sports stories you'd like to share with us, remember to send us an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +27 11714 4459. For Channel Africa Sport, I am Musibu Di Makure.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective. Africa, meet Abedi.
Yeah, that's me.
Abedi is a music lover through and through.
I really love African music.
He's got a taste for all kinds of tunes and spends his days listening to Channel Africa. Guess what? He didn't know.
Okay.
Channel Africa wants to help Abedi and all music lovers everywhere to discover even more incredible music. That is why Channel Africa is calling on all African musicians to submit their music. Musicians, remember to give us all your relevant information. Make your submissions at music@channelafrica.co.za. Submissions are your chance to be heard on radio. But sadly, they do not guarantee that you'll be playlisted. All submissions will be carefully reviewed to see if they meet our station's requirement. Channel Africa, the African Perspective.
It's time to take a final look at what's been happening on the business front right here on Rise and Shine. And with that update, here's Buntle Hedbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.
Thanks, Peter. Good morning. In our top story this hour, Total Energies' sale of a minority stake in a Nigerian onshore oil producer has fallen through. The company says this is a setback to its strategy to sell mature polluting assets and pay down debt. Total agreed in July 2024 to sell its 10% stake in the Shell Petroleum Development Company of Nigeria Limited to Mauritius-based Chapal Energies, but the regulatory approval granted for the sale last October has now been withdrawn because the two sides have not met the financial commitments required to complete the deal. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa, addressing the UN General Assembly in New York, says trade is one of the most important instruments to mobilize domestic resources for development. He says it's concerning that geopolitical shocks and unprecedented trade policy volatility are destabilizing the global economy and jeopardizing a critical source of development. The president said unilateral trade practices and economic coercion have a detrimental impact on many nations. He told the Assembly that South Africa's G20 presidency calls for inclusive economies.
Our country's G20 presidency is a significant opportunity for South Africa to advocate for Africa's development agenda and to amplify African voices in global economic governance for a continent that is irreversibly on the rise. As member states of the United Nations, we have all adopted the Sustainable Development Goals. However, many of these goals remain elusive.
Meanwhile, President Cyril Ramaphosa says the tariffs imposed on South Africa by the administration of President Donald Trump were a wake-up call for the country.
What President Trump did was a wake-up call for us. Not so much because we were not trading with other countries, but a wake-up call in saying that we need to upgrade our relations, our trade relations with many other countries in the world. We are a repository of critical natural resources that we want the world to buy from us, but also buy from us from a value-added point of view.
African countries have been urged to collaborate and trade as one with other major economies around the world. This came out of the South Africa-China Trade and Investment Promotion Conference in Johannesburg. More than 400 leading Chinese enterprises from 44 cities across 13 provinces were present, covering textiles, appliances, electronics, building materials, furniture and other areas. President of the Black Business Council, Elias Munache, says the G20 presidency also plays a key role in this matter.
There are 54 countries. On what basis then do we trade with Russia on equal footing as a continent, as opposed to individual countries dealing with China on bilateral or multilateral basis? We need then to look at this thing holistically as a continent.
Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba has launched its largest ever artificial intelligence language model today, known as the Qwen 3 Max. The company says the model is its most powerful to date and contains more than 1 trillion parameters or variables that determine how an AI system processes information. The model also shows particular strength in code generation and autonomous agent capabilities. This means that the AI system requires fewer human prompts than a chatbot like ChatGPT and can make decisions and take action independently towards a goal set by the human user. The company announced earlier this year that it plans to invest $53 billion in AI-related infrastructure over the next 3 years as competition intensifies in the sector. And now taking a look at the indicators, $1 in Nigeria is trading at 1,488 naira this morning. In Botswana, it's 13 pula 15. Kenya, the dollar is trading at 128 shilling 55. And in Zambia, it's 23 kwacha 63. Moving to the BRICS countries, $1 in Brazil is trading at 5 real 31. Russia, 83 rubles 59. In India, it's 88 rupees 67. China 7 yuan 11, and South Africa $1 is trading at 17 rand 28 cents this morning. $1 is trading at 73 pence to the British pound and 84 to the euro. Looking at commodities, gold is trading at $3,764 per ounce. Platinum $1,494 per ounce, while the price of Brent crude oil is at $67.79 a barrel. And those are your business news at this hour. I'll be back with another update in the next hour. For any business stories you'd like to share with us, please send an email to newsroom@channelafrica.co.za or call us on +2711 714 4459. For Channel Africa Business, I am Buntle Headbush.
Business news on Channel Africa. The African perspective. Africa in business on Channel Africa.
The United States was very vocal at the beginning of South Africa's G20 presidency, and this is largely due to strained relations with South Africa at the time, that they were not really keen on participating. Where do they stand right now?
The U.S. is planning to take over the presidency of the G20 next year, and our understanding from them is that they intend to continue to do so, and therefore it is quite difficult then to be in a situation where you are not attending deputies' meetings or discussions during our presidency and then to take over the presidency next year. From a finance track perspective, there has been engagement. We've been working on a communique last week and this week here in Zimbabwe. What's important about that is that it's a consensus document. And so all the members in the room have to agree to the language that is used there. And our US colleagues have been part of those discussions and negotiations.
Bringing the African markets into your home. Channel Africa, the African perspective. From Cape to Cairo, Dakar to Dar es Salaam, rise and shine with Peter Ndoro and Asanda Beda on Channel Africa.
Right, it's 8:44 Central African time, and one story that we've been looking at quite a lot this morning, given its importance, is funding for health. And the World Health Organization's Regional Office for Africa and the Global Fund have brought together health leaders, development partners, and experts in Johannesburg in South Africa to explore new ways of financing health systems. And the 3-day meeting aims to strengthen sustainable funding for universal health coverage across the continent. Our reporter Lebohang Mabange attended the first day of the event and found this report.
At the Radisson Blu and Sandton, global health stakeholders are looking for solutions to close Africa's health financing gap. Dr. Natila Tavanchi, Senior Manager for Health Financing Country Support at the Global Fund, says partners must unite to secure stronger funding.
I think for the Global Fund, it was very important to be party of a discussion of all possible partners to secure robust health financing for Africa, and be that from domestic resources, be that from grants, be that from concessional loans. So it is the time now that we come all together to address the dependency in the region, the need for domestic finances to increase in the region, but also the need for development partners to come together to support country priorities.
Dr. Tavanchi says that African countries are setting ambitious targets to achieve universal health coverage and strengthen local production of medicine.
In the African continent, the ambitions are high. So, first of all, there is this increased impetus on universal health coverage and increasing financial risk protection for everybody in the country, including the poor and the vulnerable. Then there is the movement to secure a sustainable workforce. Then there is the movement to increasingly integrate and absorb the vertical programs into the national health systems and primary health care.
The World Health Organization South Africa's country representative, Shinaz El-Halabi, says health financing is no longer a niche topic, but a central policy issue.
The phrase health financing has become so familiar in recent years. It is no longer just for technical specialists. It is now part of everyday policy discussions. We see that this in the sharp rise in research and publications on the subject, and also in the way countries are putting forward real resources behind it. Global health spending has more than doubled since 2000. All of this tells us that health financing has truly moved to the center of the health agenda. And this is rightfully so.
UNAIDS Regional Director Dr. Anne Kituku Shongwe stresses the importance of collaboration to keep Africa's health systems and HIV response strong.
So as we join hands together with our regional bodies, led by the AU and other players, the institutions such as ourselves, WHO, UNAIDS, and other partners will continue to collaborate closely with you, our governments, and look at best ways for us to ensure that the health systems that we build, the social systems, the HIV response that we have continues from strength to strength because of this collaboration.
The meeting continues this week with government officials, donors and civil society working to align financing models that can future-proof Africa's health systems. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Lebohang Mabange in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Your morning companion with the stories that matter. This is Rise and Shine on Channel Africa.
Well, the political future of Malawi is hanging in the balance as the Malawi Electoral Commission is expected to officially declare the results of the presidential election, and it is expected to happen today. Early tallies showing former President Peter Ndoro surging ahead with a significant percentage of the vote, whilst incumbent President Lazarus Chakwera is falling further and further behind. Well, the outcome could mark a dramatic political shift and raise questions about governance, democracy and stability in the country. Well, to help us unpack the latest developments, we're now joined by our correspondent in Malawi, George Mahango. George, thanks very much indeed for joining us. What do we know about whether these results will be announced today or not?
What we know is that the Malawi Electoral Commission has published a statement which is circulating in both public broadcasting institutions and then private media organizations that by 2 p.m. this day, this afternoon, they will be able to announce the results. So that is what is very confirmed. And what they are talking about is that last night they did not indicate as to who has won or declare who has won just because they were looking at some other complaints that were submitted or lodged to the electoral body. Suffice to say that there was also a court order that was obtained by the Malawi Congress Party through President Lazarus Chakwera that the commission should not announce the results pending looking at the complaints lodged.
Given the margin that's being reported, it doesn't seem as if that there's much that can change the outcome of this election. Maybe a couple of percent, but by and large, it looks like a landslide for Peter Mutharika.
It's really a big and a landslide. People are saying mudslide at the moment. Why? Because we're looking at the percentage of 65% for Peter Mutharika, and for Lazarus Chakwera is 32%. Constitutionally, based on the fresh presidential poll in 2020, there was a court issue and a law that whoever comes to amass 50% plus one is likely to be declared winner. So in this case, Peter Mutharika has gone beyond to amass that. And of course, there is no such kind of a thing that maybe even for the remaining 12 councils which are remaining, that maybe Lazarus Chakwera can manage to scoop 1.6 million votes. That's very doubtful, and it cannot happen. Looking at the gravity of the stronghold of the remaining councils for Peter Mutharika, because Peter Mutharika is also commanding a lead in the remaining 12 councils. So you put that together, then definitely, indeed, it's a big landslide, which definitely has pointed to the fact that MCP or Lazarus Chakwera did want a judicial review to obtain a court injunction, but that was quashed out last night to say MEC should go ahead, announce the winner of these presidential polls, and then life has to move on.
I suppose the analysis is going to start to happen now in terms of what happened, because it was supposed to be a tight race. There was supposed to be no clear winner, too close to call, we heard. But it sounds as if Malawians have said, we've had enough of what we've seen in the past 5 years, and we want change. And the only person that we know is Peter Mutharika.
That is very correct, because looking at the economic trends that have happened since President Lazarus Chakwera came in 2020, one, the suspension of the extended credit facility, that did, affect the country. Of course, it was revamped somewhere around in 2023, but the same government suspended it again, saying IMF was demanding so much from Malawi. So we're looking at the fuel queues. It was a perennial problem. We're looking at the inflation hovering at around 33% at the moment. When Mutharika came out, it was around 9%. So people at least, maybe had to say enough is enough. And for the next 5 years, we cannot even entrust Lazarus Chakwera with the same presidency position, because they're looking at the welfare of their children. They're looking at issues of education, issues of health, issues of road infrastructure, more especially a bread and butter on one's table, which definitely have been very scarce. And people, are depending on, it's like hand to mouth. So all those things, you put them together, that's why maybe Malawians said, I think we need not to give Lazarus Chakwera another 5-year mandate, but rather go back to Peter Mutharika, because I think they're saying that at the time that Mutharika was in power, not, of course, there were problems, but not as things are this time around. Of course, the current government has said Cyclone Freddy did affect the economy, COVID-19 did affect the economy, but the issue, even the Ukraine-Russia war affect the country's economy. But the public definitely are saying, what are the solutions that you brought on the table for us to survive? So the answer definitely for Malawians is that of Peter Mutharika. No wonder there is this landslide.
I'm going to ask you to pretend to be a political analyst now, and I just wonder what it means for Malawi. Peter Mutharika is going to have to be a different kind of president from the president that he was when he got voted out of power. Is there an indication that there could be a change in the fabric of Malawian political life, that Mutharika 2.0 is going to be very different to the one that we saw in the past? Is this a change moment for the country?
I should say democratically, politically, it's a change a moment for the country. Why? Because we're talking about the trust that the Malawians do have in the leaders or the leader that they choose. But once that trust is lost, then definitely one is just given 5 years, because you should also be able to recall the fact that Peter Mutharika came into power after the mess that Joyce Banda created through the Cashgate scandal in 2013, 2014. So, I mean, Peter Mutharika, of course, messed up things. That's why he was given 5 years mandate. So this time around that he has bounced back. The view of Malawians is that he's going to learn some lessons from the current government of Malawi Congress Party led by Lazarus Chakwera, not to mess things around politically, economically, or in all the circles. So they are looking at him as maybe he's going to bring in some change. He's not going to repeat the mistakes that he had between 2014 to 2020. So that is the general feeling of Malawians. But for Peter Mutharika himself, he said in different political campaign meetings that he's going to change the way democracy is handled by one decentralizing how money is spent, because they think that money has to be spent on the ground, maybe on a district level. So it's like a federal kind of system, and that is why they roped in Chakufa Chihana to be the second vice president based on the electoral pact that was there during the campaign period. So based on that, it's a federal kind of state, which Malawians do appreciate to have it, because they want to own how democracy or how development works in their constituencies at their district level. So you put that all those kind of things, people at least maybe are having a benefit of the doubt to say, if these things are going to be implemented, then definitely Malawi or even his presidency is going to be a good one. Of course, it's for 5 years, but the fresh mandate for the party to govern again in 2030 is going to be also tested at this moment once he's declared winner and then, sworn in. So 2025 to 2030, that's going to be a litmus test to Peter Mutharika himself and the party itself.
George, always great talking to you. Thank you so much indeed. And no doubt we'll be chatting to you again later as the results get announced. Thanks for your time.
Thank you very much.
That's our correspondent, George Mohango, in Malawi's capital. Blantyre speaking to us about the results. Were you following the elections? Yeah. Benjamin Mushatama, who's going to be talking about... You
guys have been doing fantastic. Actually been following it through your show.
It's exciting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I love elections. So, what's happening on the move after the 9 o'clock news?
Well, happy Heritage Day.
Yes, indeed. Do you like my outfit?
I really do. I think it's very cool. Very cool. I'm going to take that one from you. Beautiful dashiki indeed. Well, today we're going to be speaking on Heritage Day, but a very interesting conversation. We're going to see how the day has evolved in South Africa. Remember, we used to observe it as Shaka Day.
Yes.
We've forgotten about that so quickly.
So right.
And we used to honor the legacy of King Shaka Zulu back then. But then in post-apartheid efforts to actually acknowledge cultural pluralism, we then started thinking about it in terms of a general look at our heritage. But it's also evolved, right? Because it's been so commercialized now that it's so easy for this day to turn out into a bride day that we've all accepted. So today we're going to explore the historical development and evolving meanings of Heritage Day in South Africa. We'll speak to experts on that.
And I would, there's a question I want you to put in there.
Sure.
And I'm seeing more and more Pan-Africanism being put into the mix.
Yes.
Restaurants, clothing. I mean, even what I'm wearing now,
Sure.
It's Heritage Day, but I got this in Kenya.
Sure.
So is there another African identity that's being added to the mix on Heritage Day in South Africa?
Yeah.
Because Pan-Africanism, I think, has become a new culture as well for us.
Absolutely.
All right, that's all coming up after the news at 9 o'clock. Right now, though, it's time for me to say goodbye. We'll see you again tomorrow, bright and early, 6 a.m. Central African time. Happy Heritage Day, everybody. Here's the news with Chanduko Ligege.
SABC News. The African Perspective.
Thank you, Peter. Your top stories at this hour: Ugandan president cleared to seek re-election, and President Ramaphosa concerned about DRC security. Good morning with your news at 9 a.m. Central African time. I am Chanduko Ligege. Ugandan Electoral Commission has cleared President Yoweri Museveni to seek re-election in next year's elections. The East African country's long-time leader in 2026 will be up against his political rival, Bobi Wine, who has built a large youth following. Museveni is applauded for stabilizing the country, growing the economy, and combating HIV and AIDS. But his critics have slammed him for crackdown on the opposition, human rights abuses, and corruption. Kaili Kumalo has more.
Ugandan President Museveni has been at the helm since 1986. He once argued that Africa's problem was not its people, but leaders who overstay in power. Museveni has twice overseen constitutional changes, removing term and age limits to remain in office. The veteran leaders pledged to prioritize public safety, expand health care, and free education. His critics have accused him of using state patronage to cling to power, and these are claims he rejects.
South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa has expressed concern on the security and humanitarian situations in the DRC, Sudan, Gaza, and other parts of the world. He says there are other countries that continue to violate international law and defy UN resolutions and rulings from bodies like the International Court of Justice. President Ramaphosa added that the establishment of the Hague Group and the Madrid Group aim to reaffirm the primacy of international law, promoting accountability and ensuring support for a just peace. He has also welcomed a decision by countries which recognize Palestine as a state.
Consistent with the case that South Africa brought before the International Court of Justice, there is growing global consensus. There is growing global